I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Hey everybody, I'm Alistair Stevens. This is Dear Mr. Potter, and tonight we are going to have something of a wild and whimsical experiment. Tonight we're going to do something just a little unusual. I am going to give you a live commentary track for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This is going to be a really fun experience. Hopefully you'll be able to contribute live if you're watching with me here in the YouTube chat. We're back here, which is pretty great, back on YouTube, because Crowdcast, though it is a great platform, can't handle live broadcasts of more than 2 hours, and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is just a scotch over 2 hours. So we're using YouTube tonight. This should all work out perfectly. You can also tweet at me during the session with the hashtag Dear Mr. Potter, so that I can see those comments on Twitter too. I don't want to spend too much time in preamble here. I hope that you are all prepared here on the night of this glorious full moon to enjoy what is categorically my favorite Harry Potter movie, and I think the favorite Harry Potter movie for a lot of people. I think a lot of people kind of share my perspective on this film. I'm looking forward to talking about it. I'm looking forward to chatting with you all. Let's get into it, shall we? I am queued up to the Warner Brothers logo. As the Warner Brothers logo emerges in its full entirety and is just about to fade into Privet Drive, that's where I'm ready. So I will give you a brief countdown and then we can begin. This is pretty exciting. I'm going to have to put on headphones so that I can actually hear the audio coming from the movie. So this is an experience for me too, because now I can't quite hear my own voice so well, which is strange, but hey, this is going to be a ton of fun. We've got Angela and Tamara and Brian and Willis 10245 is joining us, and Katie and Becca is here, of course. Did I say Angela already? Angela is here. This is wonderful. What a group, what a team of people. It is fantastic to have you all here. Let's do this thing. 3, 2, 1, press play. And so our movie begins with the music coming up. Oh God, I love the music in all the Harry Potter movies. It's just extraordinary. It's so evocative, so rich, so redolent. I have listened on more than one occasion to the Harry Potter soundtrack just as a background, accompaniment to my work through the day. It's just fantastic. And we come in here on Harry pretending to be asleep, of course. Still that tension here between Harry and the Dursleys, though Harry here, crucially, is being presented to us in a magical light right from the jump. There is no transition into magic here. There is only magic. Lumos Maxima, indeed, as he conducts his homework here. The director, of course, of this movie, Alfonso Cuarón. Christopher Columbus directed the first 2 movies and wanted to continue his involvement with Harry Potter, so the story goes, but was concerned that, hey, I'm going to end up doing 7 of these things, 8 of these things, potentially, if we'd already had plans at that point to split Deathly Hallows into 2, and decided not to. Decided, in fact, that he was going to miss his kids growing up. That was just a thing that was going to happen, and for understandable reasons didn't want to do it. He is listed as a producer on this movie, but after this movie he steps back entirely. He has no further involvement with Harry Potter after this movie is done. Look at the handheld camera work here. This is very atypical for Harry Potter, certainly atypical for Harry Potter at this point, but also atypical for the rest of this movie. We've got this handheld, kind of scrappy, kind of intimate, kind of connected cinematography here, which really works to kind of expose the commonplace mundanity of Privet Drive, and the Dursleys, of course, the absolute worst. And the introduction of Aunt Marge is just terrible. I should say too that I am drinking tonight a very fine Manhattan that I just fixed before we sat down. I've already done 3 hours of podcasting today too, so I may be a little loopy by the end of this, but it's going to be pretty fun. All the incidental set dressing here in the Dursleys' house is just fantastic. That portrait of Dudley is, the worst. It's just the worst. And you'll see immediately here that we're into much more conventional cinematography. We're using much more static cameras. Here we get this pullback dolly shot of the family eating around the table, and we're kind of following Harry there, but not entirely. We're back into a more kind of conventional cinematographic mode as we move through the movie. It's also just, God, it's a beautiful depiction of mundane suburbia. This is the mugglest house that there has ever been. Yeah, as Katie says in the YouTube chat here, I love the house setting. So hideous. It absolutely is just awful. Just awful. The cane at St. Brutus's, yeah. I've always appreciated this beat, and it's very much in the performance, I think, but I've always appreciated the beat of Vernon leaning on Harry here for support. Like, what are monsters afraid of? What is the horror that lurks in the darkness that afflicts other things that lurk in the darkness? It is Marge. It is Aunt Marge. Yeah. Yes. This dog has no manners, says Becca Eller. Absolutely true. I should say, too, there is a little lag here, too, because we're back on YouTube. So there is like a 30-second lag between where I am and where you are. So we're going to be bouncing around in the chronology just a little bit. But I'll try and call out scenes as we transition into them so that if you're joining us late, you can catch up here. Yes. Sasha says, this is my favorite Harry Potter movie, despite its issues. Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie says, similarities between Aunt Marge and Hagrid as two people who have no awareness of how others perceive their pets. Wow. What an interesting thought. Yeah, I mean, there's something. There is something. Okay, here's the opposition between Marge and Hagrid, right? Hagrid never dehumanizes is the wrong word, but never reduces the animals that are in his care. Obviously, we can directly contrast with the Buckbeak scene that we'll get later, where we're talking a lot about Buckbeak's pride and his respectability. We respect Buckbeak. Hagrid respects, perhaps to excess, all the animals in his care, but Aunt Marge does not. She seems to lean back against that, in fact. She infantilizes her dog in exactly the same way she infantilizes Dudley, and even arguably infantilizes Harry, too. And now, yes, the inflation scene. I mean, there are problems with J.K. Rowling's use of obesity, use of fat as a punchline, which I don't love, and taking Aunt Marge this much further into absurdity is kind of, problematic with that. But yeah. Good. Stephanie's saying that she never thought of it until this viewing. It's fascinating. This is part of the fun, I think, of watching these movies together and having this kind of communal experience, is that we always stumble upon new perspectives. We always see things that we've never seen before, not just the perspectives that other people bring, but just we're watching it in a different mode. We're watching it perhaps in a more analytical mode, which we can certainly enjoy. And there she goes, sailing out of the door, pulling Vernon up, which suggests that this is a very powerful spell. And of course, those of you who have been listening to this season of Dear Mr. Potter will be well aware with my perspective now on wild magic and the manifestation of wild magic. Harry does not cast a spell per se at this point, but yeah, good. And thus Marge floats away, says Angela. Yeah, we'll get a little cap on this. We'll get a little button put on this later, but yes. Becca points out, as much as I don't like Aunt Marge, she has cute shoes. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah, and Katie, I love that last let go. Don't you dare. And Tamara points out that the music here is very circusy, right? It is circusy. It's very it's very light and comedic, which I think is important. You could score that scene with dark, dramatic Harry Potter music, and it would be very grim indeed. But instead, we've got something else. And here we get the focus on James and Lily, the magical picture. Coming down the stairs, look, we're back in this handheld mode. We're back in handheld camera. We've got the opposition. We've got the conflict. And this is definitive. This is the first time that Harry stands up to Vernon Dursley, really stands up to Vernon Dursley. Stands up as an adult, effectively, an agent in the world. This is a choice that he gets to make. And also, of course, as we move through, look how fast this is moving. We're 7 minutes in, and we've had our establishing sequence. And that's with a pretty long title sequence, too, as the Warner Brothers logo fades in. Yeah. Let me check on Twitter. Yeah, we're not doing a lot of Twitter tonight, which is probably for the best. We're going to stick, I think, with our with our YouTube experience here. Good. Dudley getting Mike Tysoned by those buttons, calls out Gildarts Winters. This is Harry's badass scene. Yes, though. See, this is part of the problem with the circus music, as Tamara called it. You know, this comedic music underscoring this scene, literally underscoring this scene, is that I'm not sure what we're supposed to make of Harry. I'm not sure what we're supposed to make of Harry's decision in this moment. It seems darker. Yeah. This, we should say, as we're talking about the music, this is the last Harry Potter story to feature original music composed by John Williams. Obviously, his themes will return in the rest of the series, but this is the last time that he will compose new music for Harry Potter. That's not going to be the only point of transition. Of course, we're leaving behind Chris Columbus as we move forward into the rest of the series. We're leaving behind John Williams, starting with this movie. You know, he's not going to return. And of course, we're going to talk about Dumbledore when we get to him. Yes, big transition there. Our first glimpse of the Grim, our first glimpse of a mysterious black shaggy dog, which ties back, as we discussed in the discussion of the book, ties back to these ancient English folkloric myths, right? That the black dog is a powerful mythic symbol in quintessentially English mythic culture, but also a representation itself of depression. You know, Winston Churchill used black dog as a shorthand to describe his depression, and it's been used many times before and since, though he is perhaps the most famous wielder of that particular metaphor. Yeah. Good. Oh, Gildart's notes that when Harry comes back down the stairs, the Terminator music should have played. There's a lot of intentionality there. And Leo asks, did the light go out because of magic? Well, yes, right? I mean, the light flickers and goes out because of drama, but what is it that's in effect here? What is it that happens here? It's open to speculation. Yeah, it could be Harry. It could be another manifestation of wild magic, right? Particularly given that he starts the movie with his light spell when he's doing his Lumos spell. To have the light go out might speak to a kind of symmetry. We don't get Harry's interiority in the movies, but in the book, of course, at this point, he is thinking, well, that's it. I'm done. I've crossed a line. The Ministry is going to throw me in Azkaban. I'm certainly done with Hogwarts. It's over. So if we mirror the bringing of light associated with magic and wizardry right at the beginning of the film with the extinguishing of light connected with Harry's fear now that he is going to be exiled from Hogwarts, literally so, then maybe there's something thematic happening there. So maybe it is a wild magic manifestation from Harry. Maybe it's something caused by the Grim. That's, you know what? Spoilers. You guys, we're going to be talking about this the whole time. So I guess if you've never seen this movie before, this probably isn't the best circumstance in which to watch it. But it might be a consequence of Sirius Black, right? He might be shielding himself from Muggle eyes. He knows that he's hunted even in the Muggle world at this point. I don't know what you guys make of the night bus. It's not what I imagined reading the book, I have to say. It's not what I anticipated, but it is a very striking visual, which I'm kind of into. You know, this was shot with the real bus traveling at normal, safe speeds down these cordoned off roads, and all of the other vehicles traveling extremely slowly, so that when the speed is increased, when the frame rate is ratcheted up, the bus looks like it's traveling at terrific velocities, which is, you know, a nice way of doing it. Also, old school practical effects, you guys. There was an actual bus. It has, of course, been digitally treated after the fact, but there was an actual bus just driving around some streets in London there. Nothing like the night bus in Glasgow, I'll tell you that for free, says Skipa, though not unlike the night bus in Glasgow, I'm sure. And Becca points out, the bus has a chandelier. So classy. Yes, very, very classy. Oh, and Dylan points out, Angela is calling out, I guess, the... Yes, Angela says, the whole movie is a wonderful play and use of light and darkness and shadow, which is great. And Dylan confirms that and carries it still further. Also blue. So many blues. I don't know how long it would take you watching this film to realize that it was not directed by the same guy who directed the first two. It's pretty much that opening shot, right? It's pretty much that handheld shot. But if that hasn't clued you in by this point, then you must be familiar, even if you don't care one whit for cinematography and for the demands of the director's art, you must be aware by this point that we're in different hands, you know? Controversial hands, too. Coron, of course, came on board Harry Potter at this point after coming off Y Tu Mamá También, which is, you know, kind of a different film. I hope that there isn't anyone out there who watched his work here with Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban and thought, wow, I'm really into this guy's aesthetic. I'm really into his storytelling chops. I should go and watch Y Tu Mamá También. That would be a mistake, right? I mean, not a mistake, because that is a fantastic, it's a magnificent film, but it's also a very tough film to watch. It is not for the children in the audience. Yes. Stephanie asks, is this the first view in any of the movies of a magical newspaper? Yes, I think so. I have a vague recollection that perhaps we did see one earlier, but this is certainly the most striking and most narratively functional use of the magical newspaper. Yes, good. Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Katie says, no, we see the first one in the empty Gringotts vault. You're right. You're right, we did. Good. Good. Excellent. Saved Girl 309 asks, I wonder if they put makeup on the greeter of the night bus to intentionally make his skin look bad. I'm certain that they did. Yes, he is grotesque, right? The whole night bus as a focal concept effectively is grotesque. And I think, I don't know, I suppose buses are the same the world over. I'm sure that the night bus, the idea of the last bus that travels on any given route in any town or city in the world, I'm sure the experience is going to be pretty much the same, but there is a grotesquerie to that last late night bus, right? And that's called out. Certainly it's suggested by the prose in the novel, by Rowling's prose in the novel, but it is absolutely heightened here. Yeah, it's impossible to miss that. And here we are already with Cornelius Fudge. boy, you know, this movie, 2 hours and 20 minutes of this film, but it moves. It really does. But without that slavish regard for direct transliteration that we saw in Christopher Columbus's work. If you guys have been with me since the beginning of Dear Mr. Potter, you will know that I am no fan of Christopher Columbus's adaptive choices, primarily because he didn't make any. And those that he did make are utterly nonsensical. There are logical gaps in the plots of the first 2 Harry Potter movies, which can only be filled by a knowledge of the book. They do not stand alone as stories. This story, however, absolutely stands on its own. And the adaptive choices, while subtle, are generally, I think, they're of 2 forms. There are those adaptive choices that are required in order to make this a movie rather than a direct transliteration of the book. They're smart cinematographic choices. They're smart choices for pacing and for visual representation and for externalization, because we don't have access to Harry's interiority in quite the same way. And they're also substantive kind of evolutions of what the book is already doing. We're kind of advancing the agenda of the book and kind of refining the agenda of the book. So some of them are concessions to this being a movie, and some of them are simply responses to the book. It's kind of an interrogation of the text of the book itself, which is something that Cuarón is extraordinarily skilled at. I'm a huge fan of his work here. Yeah. I do love Cornelius Fudge. He's just so odious, so terrible, so perfectly tough to watch. Of course, we are not, I think, given to be suspicious of Cornelius Fudge in quite the same way as we will be later. But you know, you don't cast Robert Hardy without certain expectations. This is a great practical effect too. The Monster Book of Monsters as a practical effect is a thing of beauty. But I like this very much. Yeah, good. Let me see here. Kay Glenna, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, says, it feels more fitting to the eccentricity of wizards in a world to have distortions of light, heads reminiscent of other cultures, and goofy-looking wizards. I'm not sure that I love the shrunken head. I'm not sure that I love this story treating that kind of appropriation of cultural iconography so casually. I don't think that it earns it, is the thing. This is a real cultural icon that is played here entirely for a joke. And that's okay, but this is also a story about wizards, and we could have invented something that would have been, you know, different. We could have had you know, I'm thinking of the door knocker in Muppet Christmas Carol, you know, something that is similarly grotesque and even similarly proportioned, but is different nonetheless. Yeah, good. Harry staying at the Leaky Cauldron makes Diagon Alley feel so much smaller, says Natalie. Yes, no, that's true. That's absolutely true. And Brian says, one of my favorite parts in the book is Harry's freedom in Diagon Alley. I wish we could have explored that a little in the movie. Well, this is one of the fundamental switches, right? This is one of the most powerful changes of focus and emphasis that we get in the book. Harry's an adult. He answers to no one in his time in Diagon Alley. And that freedom is something that I wish we'd had more of, certainly in the movie. There you go. Look, it's done. We've kind of wrapped it up already. But certainly, and specifically in the book too, I would have liked a little more. Though that would have, if anything, exacerbated the structural problem here in Prisoner of Azkaban, which is that it takes us a good long time to get to Hogwarts and an even longer time to really get the plot started. There's foreshadowing right now, but we're not really in the story as a whole. I love these actors. I mean, the spectacular good fortune of the casting directors, I suppose, of the Harry Potter movies is just extraordinary. To have 3 such skilled and gifted actors, I mean, Rupert Grint is inarguably, I think, the weakest of the 3, but still manages to do great work in this movie. I just love it. And we haven't yet arrived at those genuinely terrible Goblet of Fire haircuts, which are just distracting throughout the entire film. So much hair in Goblet of Fire, you guys. We're going to get a chance to talk about that in about 3 or 4 months, I guess, when we finally get to the end of Goblet of Fire. Those of you keeping up with Dear Mr. Potter will know, in fact, that we're going to take a brief break to talk about Ursula K. Le Guin's A Wizard of Earthsea. We're going to cover that in 4 or 5 weeks, and then we're going to launch straight into Goblet of Fire. So no year-long break between the 3rd and 4th seasons of Dear Mr. Potter. Good. Oh, Kendall's calling out Molly and Arthur. Molly and Arthur, you guys, brilliant on the page, perfect casting on the screen. I think I've talked before about the notion of perfect casting. It's a very treacherous thing because oftentimes when you're talking about casting, it's very easy to fall into the not even trap, I suppose, but the kind of logical reinforcement that the person who plays the character is the best person to play the character because they're the best person to give the performance that you're watching and enjoying. Thus, it's kind of a tautological statement to say that any actor is the best actor to give the performance that you're watching because only that actor could have given that performance. But occasionally, you can break free of that and say, no, actually, from an objective perspective, that is the right casting choice. And, you know, my go-to example of this is Robert Downey Jr. in the Marvel movies. He is the perfect Tony Stark. He is 100% Tony Stark. And we hit that more than a handful of times, I would argue, here in the Harry Potter universe. Julie Walters as Molly Weasley is spectacular. And the brilliant Mark Williams as Arthur is one of my favorite performances, actually, start to finish. In the whole series, I just love watching him on screen. Anytime the Weasleys are on screen, I'm crazy about them. And here we are on the Hogwarts Express, 19 minutes into the movie. Again, that pacing, you guys. Filming of this sequence had to be delayed because of real-life vandalism on the real-life Hogwarts Express, which just goes to show that not even the wizarding world of Harry Potter is safe from the depredations of you know, the lowest common denominator in our shared culture. Just too bad, just too sad, I think. Yes, Angela notes, it's interesting how Harry and Arthur move in and out of shadows and cramped spaces in this scene. You're absolutely right, Angela. And thank you for calling out the play of light and dark, this kind of chiaroscuric effect that we get through the course of this film. We also play a lot, not just with... okay. One of the things that makes the kind of hard use of light and shadow interesting in cinema is that we can use light and shadow to constrain the frame itself. The frame itself is always 16 by 9, but if we bracket it with hard shadows of an unorthodox shape perhaps, then we focus the audience's attention on what remains, on what is lit. And we do that a lot through this movie. We certainly do it as we move through that space there in the Leaky Cauldron. So we'll do that throughout this movie, but we will also frame using the structures, using like the physical sets too. There's that shot as Harry first enters the train and he closes the door, and the way that we are constrained into this smaller world, we get that sense of intimacy, right? And then as the Dementors attack, here we are again in black and in blue here as the Dementors begin their attack on the Hogwarts Express. Their attack is probably stressing it a little too hard. Their investigation of the Hogwarts Express, at least. We're back in black and blue there on the famed viaduct there in Scotland. But we also constrain our frame using the physical, you know, accoutrement of the scene, the physical set itself. And we're going to do that now with the Dementors as they approach. It's beautifully done. We get the frosting on the glass. There is a weird story about the pre-production. And this is one of these stories that is, gosh, so perfect as to be potentially apocryphal. I don't know that I really believe that this happened. But Alphonse Cuarón, while he was prepping this, was talking about the Dementors bringing with them ice. He wanted the manifestation of ice surrounding the Dementors. This was going to be a serious thing that was going to kind of herald their arrival, as we get in the sequence that I'm seeing right now, the shadowy figure moving against the frosted glass, the ice-rimed glass here. But because Cuarón's command of English is not perfect, and because his accent is a little thick, the production design people thought that he said not ice, but eyes. And apparently there were storyboard proposals made for the spontaneous manifestation of eyes as the Dementors attack. So presumably the windows, instead of being frosted with ice, would have just sprouted eyes, or shadowy eyes would have been there on the glass, which is all the more disturbing. Like, I don't want that. I definitely don't want that. No, thank you. But yeah. The visual design of the Dementors, of course, and the audible design, the auditory design of the Dementors, owing a lot, I think, to the depiction of the Nazgul in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies. But that's entirely appropriate since J.K. Rowling inadvertently kind of tapped into that herself. Yeah. And here we have our introduction of the fantastic Remus Lupin. He's so great. He's such a great character. It's such a magnetic performance. David Thewlis does extraordinary work. David Thewlis, of course, not generally known for playing heroic characters, and yet here he is playing a low-key kind of heroism. And the way to comment on the audio design of this entire story, the way that we have the scream fading into the train whistle, fading into Harry awakening, beautifully done. Beautifully done. Yes, Stephanie says the face-sucking graphics always really freaked me out. Yes, the tugging of the face, the kind of blurring effect there, it's not terribly sophisticated, right? It's not terribly advanced. It's the kind of digital effects work that we could have seen in a movie done 5 or 6 years before Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. But what it is restrained and specific and deliberate. And that's very impressive. Yeah. The Ocean Palace says, Lupin, I'm your biggest fan. Yeah, we all love Lupin. We all love Lupin. Yes. Brian says, this is an interesting little trivia note here. Thulis was up for the role of Quirrell. I'm so glad he was saved for Lupin. He would have been a great Quirrell, is the thing. But that would have been much more in the tradition of David Thulis's roles, even at this point, I think. This is a different direction to go with this character, but he's just, yes, just perfect. And Becca points out, Lupin doesn't even say the spell. He's just that good. Notice how that works out? Wild magic, the manifestation of wild magic, or at least the manifestation of unconventional wizarding magic. We can do magic without the necessary vocalization and without the necessary, manipulation of the wand. We don't necessarily need either of those focal media in order to cast spells in the world of Harry Potter. Yeah. EBCT points out Crookshanks looks super mechanical. Crookshanks oftentimes is mechanical in this movie and doesn't always look great. There were 2 cats, I believe, that were used for Crookshanks, but yes, not always great. Yeah. Gildart's Winter says David Thewlis could have played Scabbers and he would have been great. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yes, Katie says later in the books they teach how to do spells without speaking. They absolutely do. This is one of these examples, I think, of J.K. Rowling kind of almost unconsciously arriving at the better narrative conceit, right? It's pretty clear from the first book that no, actually, we do need wands and spells in order, wands and vocalization in order to cast spells. We need to say the spell in order for it to happen, and that's where our focus is. Later, we retcon that out, which, I'm kind of a fan of that. So, of course, at this point, we have to talk about Albus Dumbledore. We have to talk about Michael Gambon. We have to talk about the dear departed Richard Harris, who did such a spectacular job in the first 2 movies, I should say, that he completely overshadows Michael Gambon. And I like Michael Gambon as an actor. I enjoy him in other things. He's in, lots of wonderful things that you can enjoy. I don't love him as Dumbledore. And one of the things that I love least about him as Dumbledore is simply his imprecision. He's not bringing book Dumbledore to life. He is, of course, famously dismissive and honestly more than a little snide about the books. Famously, he never read one of the Harry Potter novels, not in all his time playing Albus Dumbledore. And I think that because of that, he doesn't bring a kind of a literary, a textual authenticity to the role. He's playing a version of Dumbledore that is markedly distinct from the pages of book Dumbledore, and is, of course, all the worse because it stands in contrast with Richard Harris, who not only gave, for me, a softer and more developed and more thoughtful depiction of Albus Dumbledore, but was much closer to the book in his intent and much more respectful, I think, of the source material. Yeah. Yes, as Lizzie says, Gambon as Dumbledore seems so much harsher and meaner, but without, like, the substance, right? I don't feel as though that's a choice. I feel as though it's almost just flat. It's an affect that he's adopted. He will get better. I do think that this is Gambon's worst performance as Dumbledore, which is okay in a way because this is also his least significant role as Dumbledore. But yes, Dylan says he isn't as warm. Absolutely not as warm. Yeah, yeah. Good. And Tamara says, one of my favorite things about Dumby, I like Dumby as a contraction of Dumbledore. That's very good. One of my favorite things about Dumby is his quirkiness, which Gambon doesn't have at all. No, this very specific, intentional kind of focused foreshadowing that we're getting here, there's none of the ambiguity, there's none of the whimsicality, there's none of the magic of Richard Harris's performance. As I say, I like Michael Gambon in many, many things, and I'm sure we can shout out in the YouTube chat many things that we've enjoyed him in. He is fantastic in Gosford Park, if you've ever seen that. He's just wonderful in Gosford Park. But yeah, not my favorite thing about this movie. Actually, maybe my least favorite thing about this movie. It's entirely possible that that's the case. Yeah. Let me see here. The introduction to the Gryffindor common room and our boys, our lovely precious Gryffindor boys who are growing up so fast before our very eyes. It is going to be weird, by the way, covering the rest of the Harry Potter series. It is going to take us, what do we think, probably 18 months, somewhere between 18 months and 2 years to get through the rest of the books in Dear Mr. Potter, and of course, therefore, through the rest of the movies too. But that means we're going to see these kids grow up and fast forward, and that's going to be weird. I mean, fantastic for Neville Longbottom. You know, we're going to get a really great perspective on that young man's emergence into his adulthood, but it's going to be weird seeing these kids grow up so fast, so fast. Yeah, the fat lads, see, this is really interesting. We've got two contrary quotes right here. We have Leo Bell saying, the fat lady is great, and Elizabeth Stevens saying, the new fat lady also misses for me. I can't help but love the fat lady because the fat lady is Dawn French now, and Dawn French is beloved of my heart, and there's only so much that I can do to not love Dawn French. So she wins me over because of who she is much more than her portrayal here. But yeah, it is a little goofier too. The camaraderie here in the Gryffindor common room, we managed to communicate a lot of the friendship and the reconnection of this friendship and community that is so important to Harry. Arguably because of its necessary constriction, I would argue. Arguably, I would argue. Because of its necessary constriction, because of the adaptive choices that are made in the movie version, that specific community is all the more important to Harry in the movie version of Azkaban than it is in the book. Yeah. Good. Yeah, calling out the candy fun here. Yes, Katie says, I love the shenanigans of the boys. Becca says, what are these candies? I don't know. Matthew says, this scene feels very sexy to me, which, okay. I'm not sure that well, okay. The intimate lighting, the camera. I mean, there is a real emotional intimacy there, right? Maybe. Great cinematographic introduction there to the Whomping Willow too, which I'm always fond of. And here we are, Sybil Trelawney, our first divination class, the magnificent, the mesmeric Emma Thompson, who only took, and this is, a story that you'll hear repeated again and again by serious actors who take the large paychecks necessary to appear in these movies. But she took this because of actually a niece in Emma Thompson's case urged her to take this part, and so she did, and of course earned a very nice paycheck for doing so, and a lot of acclaim, a lot of popularity, and well deserved. She's just so good, so good, and brings a kind of humanity, I think, to Sybil Trelawney that is absent from the book. It's impossible, I think, to look at the movie version of Trelawney as an object of mockery and ridicule in quite the way that we look at the book version of Trelawney, right? I think that's the distinction there. And Karen says, I love them all just sitting on their puffs. Isn't this fantastic visual design? Isn't this just wonderful? I love the idea that we kind of have a BYOF approach to furnishing the classrooms here at Hogwarts. Bring your own furniture. Just each teacher can just, decorate their classrooms however they see fit, which means that the potions classroom is a conscious decision by Professor Snape, which I also find to be completely compelling. Yeah, good. I'm kind of watching just the bottom part of my own live video as I'm doing this, and I'm realizing how much I gesture when I'm talking here on the things. I've also kind of canted the camera down a little bit just to make this all a little easier to follow if you're watching on, a single device and you're kind of shuttering screens and windows around to make this whole thing work. But yeah, it's very distracting to see my hands flap. So, yeah, poor Neville, says Brian. Yes. Gildart says, yes, Sybil was not very well done in the books, not quite as well written as she deserved. I'm thinking, that's interesting. Is it fair to see a stronger version of a character and retroactively criticize the version of that character that's given us in the books? Yeah, I think that's probably fair, particularly in an intertextual adaptation, such as this version of Prisoner of Azkaban, perhaps. Yeah, good. Brian says, every time my wife and I have tea, we basically reenact this scene. That is my favorite thing. I'm a huge fan of that. Yes, I think you should, YouTube that and share it with us. Yes, good. Yes, Angela notes as we move into the next scene, I love how Hermione shows up and Ron is like, where did you come from? It's so subtle and perfect. Yeah, the use of Hermione's Time Turner subplot. I mean, gosh, we're moving so fast, right? We're progressing so swiftly through this plot. Time check, 31 minutes in, right? We're barreling through this plot. It's extraordinary. And yeah, the way that we weave these subplots in is beautifully done, because we don't do what Chamber of Secrets did. We don't do what Philosopher's Stone did, which is just kind of high point, proper noun. That's enough. We give you the framework of the plot and you know it from the book already, so that's fine. And Coron kind of expanded that to, I think of this as we move down the bank to Hagrid's hut. Coron gives us a stronger vision of Hogwarts, a definitive vision of Hogwarts than Christopher Columbus did. Now, that, at least, is not entirely Christopher Columbus's fault as director, because he was working with a much more fixed budget for the first two movies in the series. Coron was given a little more money and kind of translated that into a much more consistent representation of Hogwarts. We see how these sets fit together better. We have a better sense of the internal and external geography of Hogwarts, and we'll continue to use this. This is the template going forward. This is what Hogwarts looks like now. This is how these spaces interact. We don't ever again meaningfully or substantially revise our understanding of Hogwarts, which is perfect. Yeah. Draco Malfoy, the wonderful Tom Felton, giving us a kind of impressive, see, one of my favorite things, we're looking at the Dementor scene here as he and the other Slytherin kids mock Harry for being so frightened of the Dementors. One of my favorite things is a good actor acting badly because his character is a bad actor. I'm always delighted by that, and Tom Felton gives us a really good example here. Yeah, good. Gildarts Winter says, on Columbus Day, I celebrate that guy. Yes, Chris Columbus, yes. There's his name. Yeah, Green-Eyed Danielle says, anyone watch Draco on The Flash? Tom Felton is fantastic in The Flash, by the way. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen him do anything but this, go check out the CW's Flash series, which is actually just a really good procedural superhero series. I like it quite a lot. It has long-term problems. It has kind of long-form narrative problems, but each individual episode is generally very entertaining, and Tom Felton is fantastic. And kind of not at all what you expect, while also simultaneously, superficially being very Draco Malfoy. It works really quite beautifully. Yeah, good. Sasha points out the seasonal changes on the grounds are among my favorite things about this film. Yeah, I love the progression of the seasons. In all the films, actually, even in the first two. I love how we progress through the school year, and because we're doing it in such a compressed space, the necessary padding that afflicts the novels in the series, at least the first 4 novels in the series, is less significant. It just matters less. We lead time more readily. And partly I think that's just a function of our kind of cinematic vocabulary. We're just accustomed to movies playing more loosely with time. A cut happens and an indeterminate amount of time has passed. And until the movie tells us how much time has passed, we don't know for sure. And that's fine. We don't necessarily expect it to fill in. But Rowling's kind of more consistent and placid style makes those jump cuts in the linear narrative a little more conspicuous, at least, you know? Yes, everybody backs up and leaves Harry standing by himself, but then we get the bowing to Buckbeak, and the Buckbeak effects I just completely love. We do spend a little less time on the composite shots with Hagrid here. You'll notice as you watch this film that Hagrid is often filmed by himself or kind of out of frame. We get less interaction with Hagrid because when you're taking these more ambitious, this more ambitious cinematographic approach to the material, as Quaron is doing here, you know, and obviously when I talk about the director's cinematographic approach, that is not to deny the art directors, the cinematographer, the actual camera operators, you know, who do this thing, but the director does kind of, a strong director like Quaron absolutely instills a visual style and will be responsible for the composition of each individual shot. So you'll oftentimes see Hagrid less interactive in this movie than he is in the first 2 movies, which in part is perhaps just because we're less impressed by that effect at this point. It's still a really impressive effect back in Philosopher's Stone, less so now, I think. And then we get Harry taking off on Buckbeak and being thrown into the deep end of the pool. What is Hagrid's approach to teaching a kid to swim? Throw him in the deep end of the pool, quite literally. You'll figure it out probably, and if you don't, there are probably things living in the lake that can save you or harm you in some way. This is, of course, utterly distinctive. The music rises. We get the aerial shots of Hogwarts. Then we're going to skim out across the lake. We're going to get that shot of Harry Potter, which is repeated now, gosh, in all of the promotional material for the series. It is mimetic. It is one of the few shots in the Harry Potter series as a whole that has kind of transcended the Harry Potter series as a whole. It's almost not even a shot from a Harry Potter film. It is just a shot of wonder and awe and childhood and innocence and purity and brilliance and the magic of cinema and all of these wonderful things. It's just gorgeous. Yeah. Yes, Kendall says the aerial shots are just the most amazing. I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Elizabeth is calling out Harry's horribly tied necktie. Yes, it's not great. But then who taught him to tie a tie? Did anyone teach him to tie a tie? Oh, no. Did Hagrid teach him to tie a tie? Did he have a tie before going to Hogwarts? Probably not, right? It doesn't seem as though Harry would have gone to a school with a uniform. Yeah, I don't know. It was also, I should say, I went to, British high schools, British primary schools too that did have formal uniforms. Not quite Hogwarts formal, obviously. I've never worn a robe for a formal occasion. One fine day I will, but not for going to school every day anyway. But it was kind of cool to follow the letter of the dress code, but not quite the spirit of the dress code. You have to wear a tie, so you can tie the tie in an unconventional way or in a poor way, just to deliberately show off that you're flouting the rules while not actually getting in trouble. Yeah. Yes. Yes, Allison calls out the wide shot of the sun coming out of the clouds is fantastic. Yes, isn't it? Isn't it though? Just the best. Elizabeth says, I fell in love with the Hogwarts grounds in a whole new way after this film. That is, I think, because the Hogwarts grounds are realized for the first time, right? It's never been clear, or at least it was never clear in the first two films, how Hogwarts worked as a structure. And those of you who have listened to me talk on other podcasts will know that I'm kind of preoccupied with physical spaces in visual narratives. You know, I'm interested in how, you know, how Serenity fits together on Firefly. Serenity I go to because it's actually a specifically great example, a particularly great example. Hogwarts doesn't hang together as a real place in the first two films, but now it does. And as I say, will remain consistent for the rest of the series. Yeah. Yeah, Karen says, Beaky dragging his claws in the water is just kind of showing off, but I kind of love it anyway. Yeah, me too. Me too. Yes, Stephanie says, I think Harry would do the tie scruffily even if he knew how to do it right. Or maybe I'm thinking of young James's intentionally tousled hair, right? Yes, you're absolutely right. That's exactly the same impulse. Good. Good. Kate Glenn is recommending The Borrowers. Tom Felton as Pea Green forever made him an adorable little nugget of a good guy, no matter what Draco made him out to be. That's very good. I've never seen that version of The Borrowers, but I could check that out. Yes. I'm certainly into watching things with Tom Felton in them. I kind of like him as an actor. Yeah. Good. Yes, Kate says, I love that Hermione keeps a cool head even when it's her enemy who is hurt. Yes. Hermione, ever the voice of logos and rationality here. Yeah. As Becca says, Becca anticipating my response there, Hermione is the voice of reason as always. Yes, completely. Excuse me as I just enjoy a sip of my Manhattan there. This is going to keep me sustained as we move through the rest of this film. 40 minutes in all but, so we're now introducing Sirius Black into the Hogwarts side of the storyline. So we've had the beat of Sirius before, we've had the glimpse of quote unquote the Grim before, but now we're doing something else, and we get that brilliant, oh my god, Gary Oldman as Sirius Black is always fantastic, but is perhaps never more intimidating than he is in that looping shot that we get on the cover of the newspaper. It's just so strong. This brief little glimpse here too of the Dementors withering life, not taken from the book. The Dementors do not have this effect in the book. They do not wither the life of the plants as they pass by. They do not chill them to this degree. It's something a little different, but I like that a lot. Brian is asking what bourbon is the base for my Manhattan. I am actually making this on the recommendation of my favorite bartender in the world at my favorite bar in the world. I actually made this Manhattan with Overholt rye, and I have to say, it is extremely good. The great thing about Overholt rye, and the reason that it was recommended to me by my favorite bartender at my favorite bar in the world, R&J Supper Club right here in Oklahoma City. Stop by and tell them that I sent you. The reason that it is recommended to me is that it is incredibly cheap. It's very, very cheap, but also very, very good. So this Manhattan is, I forget the quantities. I just make it instinctively now, so now I forget the quantities. But it is the Overholt rye, the sweet vermouth, a dash of orange hibiscus bitters, and this is not a Morello cherry that is in this. This is like a dark, gorgeous, wonderful, real cherry, which I just adore. So this is, yes. I only like Manhattans with rye, says Willis. I'm inclined to agree. Like, I've had some bourbon Manhattans that I really like, but yes, if I've got good bourbon, that's good bourbon. I just like drinking neat. Good bourbon, I kind of like drinking like scotch, right? Yeah. Anyway, that's not what we're here to discuss. we're here to discuss the Boggart. We're here to discuss poor Neville Longbottom and his approach to the Boggart. This is how you do a defense against the dark arts class, you guys. This is it. Thulis is so immediately affable and lovable, and his response there to Professor Snape, that little chuckle and that middle distance look that he gives, this is an actor who knows his stuff. This is an actor who understands this character. That is a beat that is never written into the script. That is Thulis bringing out his understanding of Lupin. It's a real, genuine humanity. He is magnificent, absolutely magnetic, absolutely compelling, absolutely convincing, and able to stand his ground against any of the actors in this series. I think just genuinely tremendous. And of course, we should just love and adore Neville, of course, young Matthew Lewis, just great and gifted, and the heart of Gryffindor here. And then the emergence of the Boggart. And I love the assembled massed ranks of the Gryffindor kids here as Alan Rickman giving a knockout performance here as not really Severus Snape. Pretty fantastic. Just a wonderful moment as Neville casts the ridiculous charm to fend off fear, right? This is why we introduce the Boggart right here at the beginning. This is why the Boggart is so thematically appropriate, is because the Boggart relies upon your fear. It is predatory upon your fear. And of course, we're going to fold this into the ongoing thematic notion of the fear of fear itself as we move through the story. Just great. And Gildarts Winter says, foreshadowing the Battle of Hogwarts, and then listen to this music. Listen to this fantastic jazzy ragtime beat that comes up here as we move into a more comedic phase. This is a great example of the ways in which the scoring beneath a scene can modulate our response to that scene. It's very powerful. And the effects here, very good. The joy, the glee from Thulis here, just perfect, right? It's just very good. Let me see here. Yes, Angela points out the Slytherins are in this in the group in the movie, but not the book. I wonder what have appeared to Draco. Yeah, that's, you know, Rowling plays a little fast and loose with how the classes are structured at Hogwarts. I don't generally think that when a school, by the way, the ridiculous manifestation of the Jack in the Box clown, far more terrifying. That's just real bad. Just real bad. And now things are about to go terribly wrong for Harry. This is a great adaptive choice, by the way, right? This moment, this push into Harry's POV, look at how the cinematography slows here, and we move in slow motion. Thulis comes in with his arms spread wide, driving it back, and we see the transformation into the full moon as he takes the shot, right? He takes the bullet there for Harry. Powerful stuff. I love the way that this is an example, I think, of a strong adaptive choice where it's not quite the intent of the original text, but it's an evolution of the intent of the original text. Yeah, good. Excellent, excellent. Let me see if anything is happening over here on Twitter. Yes, we got some thoughts from Thunder Thief. Sharing my thoughts, Thunder Thief says, Jen says, on the POA movie, since I can't live tweet tonight, I was a non-book reader when I saw the Harry Potter movies, and while, as this thought continues, I enjoyed the first two movies and thought they were fun. The time-turner ending for Prisoner of Azkaban blew me away, and I thought it was so well done. When I finally read the books, I was a little underwhelmed by the book version. It continues to be one of my favorite parts in the Harry Potter movies. That's a very interesting and not uncommon perspective, I have to say. Yes, it's a really powerful representation of that sequence, and I think that this is just something that works more powerfully in a visual medium than it does on the page. I think that inherently the time turner plot works when we can see what is happening and we can kind of get that direct and indirect, that kind of direct interaction layered on top of indirect action, layered on top of direct action. You know, we are perceiving this as Harry and Hermione are perceiving this as Harry and Hermione experience this. That's pretty good. That's a good, strong thing. Yeah. The criminally underused Maggie Smith getting a brief beat there as Minerva McGonagall in this sequence. We didn't go through all the trouble of the form and the pressure that is put on Hogsmeade because we don't need to. This is, again, a smart adaptive choice. We strip away those inessential elements from the story, which is always challenging, always difficult. And I love that we reframed this sequence here on the bridge, the rickety bridge of Hogwarts here. Good. Let me catch up with the YouTube channel. Sasha says, the time turner part of the film is one of my favorite things in the film series too. Yeah, just gorgeous. And Brian says, look at the huge clock pendulum in the background. The way that clock pendulum swings across. Hey, you guys, it's the passage of time. Do you think the passage of time might be significant in this movie? It is. It's so much more significant in the movie. I think that's the other thing that benefits the time turner subplot in the movie is just that relatively little is cut from the time turner subplot. So as a proportion of the story as a whole, it expands to fill the available space. That is to say that the time turner plot, if you count the pages that we spend on the time turner plot in the book, it is, gosh, what, 2%, 3%, 4% of the total running time of that book. But here it is far more significant. And because it's also visually represented, I think it works. Yeah, just pretty great. Yes, love the bridge too, and the massive clock, says Elizabeth, calling that out too. Oh, this is fantastic. Katie says, my cat was named after McGonagall. Minnie. Minnie is pretty great. As A, Minnie is a great name for a cat. B, I would be very tempted, if I had a cat, to name that cat Professor Minerva McGonagall. I think the full title would work for me. Yes. Minerva, also a very good name for a cat now that I think of it. McGonagall, also a very good name. Yeah, any permutation. It's even Professor, a very good name for a pet cat. So any permutation of Minerva McGonagall's name, an excellent name for a cat. Go forth, you guys. Go to your local rescue shelters, your local humane societies. Get a cat and name that cat Minerva McGonagall. I will be very fond of that. Professor Minnie, says Gildarts Winters. Right, every possible variation. Every possible variation. Kendall says, is Lupin the first one to pull the "Your Mother's Eyes" line? In the movies, yes. In the books, we have a previous mention of it. God, see, now I just wish that I had Elizabeth Stevens' encyclopedic recall of every possible line in every possible Harry Potter novel. But yeah, I believe that this is the first mention in the movies, at least, yeah. Erica says it's decided. Those are my next cat names. Very good, right? Very, very good names. I don't know if you had more than one cat. Professor Minerva McGonagall and what? What do we think? Severus Snape? Would Severus Snape be a good name for a cat? I mean, I think cats are inherently Slytherin-y. Possibly, yes. I, of course, actually had a cat named Hermione for a while there. So, you know, I understand the impulse to name pets after Harry Potter characters. So you'll see even here, even as we move into the utterly bewildering, you know, the staircase chamber, the grand staircase here of Hogwarts, in this movie, it is every bit as deliberately bewildering as it was in the first two movies, but much less unintentionally bewildering, right? It is just impossible to chart the actual geometry, the physical space of this room in the first two movies, because we're leaning so much on the idea of the moving staircases, but Quaron does not allow the in-universe magic to eclipse the textual magic of his film, right? This is the magic of cinematography more than it is the magic of Hogwarts, and that should always come first. We are here, of course, to tell a story. Natalie's calling out Percy's, excuse me, I'm head boy. Perfect delivery. Yes, I'm inclined to agree. Just lovely. Just lovely. Good. Let me see. Yeah, Percy is head boy. Yes. Allison says, calling out the Harry Potter and the Sacred Text podcast, which I've mentioned before. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. I urge you all to go and listen to that podcast. Yes, I'm actually looking forward now to catching up with their third season and discussing Prisoner of Azkaban, because I haven't listened to a moment of it since I've been prepping my own discussion of the third book. So it's going to be very good. Yeah. Brian says, I love Percival as a name, but I could never name a child that because Percy Weasley. Yeah, Percy's a problem, right? Percy's a problem, but also Fred and George are the worst. Here we get the elaborate door-locking mechanism of Hogwarts. Completely unnecessary, but very, very powerful. And the Dementors lingering outside, hanging in the air outside Hogwarts Castle. Some of those landscape shots are just spectacular. What podcast is that, asks Erica. Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. It is absolutely fantastic. It looks at the text of the Harry Potter novels as though they are inherently sacred texts, as though you are analyzing them, looking for life lessons, looking for guidance, looking for inspiration, looking for perspectives on humanity. It's very, very good. Vanessa and Casper are very smart. It's also very fun. Like, I maybe just made it sound a little heavy to listen to. It is very, very deft, very wry, very sparky. I love that podcast a lot. So yes, definitely go check that out. Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. Yes, good. Percy, I never liked him, said the Ocean Palace. Yes. So Kate's saying, no, wait, Fred and George are the best. Okay. This is the thing about Fred and George. Fred and George are in a type of story that Harry Potter, the series, is no longer as interested in. Fred and George work brilliantly in the boarding school adventure story because they are pranksters, and pranksters can operate within that milieu because they are necessary within that milieu, right? You can't have a boarding school adventure story without the pranksters. But by the time that we get to Prisoner of Azkaban and we're beginning to pivot, if not completely, then at least substantially, away from boarding school adventure into outright fantasy series, Fred and George start looking like they are, God, sociopathic. They're really starting to look difficult here. Another gorgeous beat with the Whomping Willow there as we transition into winter. By the way, completely unnecessary. Love that shot. So good. And here, speaking of the ways in which the various professors decorate their classrooms, we've had the poofs and the hanging tapestries of Sybil Trelawney's divination class, and we've had the kind of scholarly and academic environment, but a kind of informal academia of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class. But now here we are. Snape comes in and everything changes. The whole spirit of the room changes. Look at how these shots are framed and lit and composed versus the previous version of the scene. Just gorgeous. What's wrong with sociopathic Fred and George, says Angela Lurie. I mean, I feel as though you've answered your own question there, Angela. What is wrong with the sociopathic Fred and George? The sociopathic bit is what I'm going to say. Yeah. Yeah. Kate says, but F and G are so much deeper than just pranksters. I agree that POA is the worst book for Fred and George. Right, okay, this is what I want to qualify here. I am talking about Fred and George from the perspective of Prisoner of Azkaban, right? Yes, they are going to change and evolve, but there is a sense in which they have been left behind by Prisoner of Azkaban. They haven't quite caught up yet. Our introduction to the notion of the animagus and werewolves, because Hermione doesn't actually need to go and write an essay. Hermione knows what's up. She's already read the book. She's probably already written the essay. There's a great story, by the way, that when Cuarón took over this franchise, he thought it was important that he get to know the characters, but also get to know the actors and kind of get to know the characters through the lens of the actors. So he set a task for our three main leads here and said, go and write me a paper, go write me an essay about your character. And fulfilling their roles perfectly, Emma Watson turned in a 16-page, immaculately written, immaculately composed essay about Hermione Granger. And Daniel Radcliffe turned in a page about Harry that kind of covered the high points of his relationship with Harry, and Rupert Grint never turned in his essay. Just, you know, art imitating life, imitating art, imitating life there, I guess. I love that story. Yes. Kate says, God, Emma Watson is literally the best. I adore her. I know that there is a rift in the fandom, right? I know that there are people out there who dislike Emma Watson's portrayal and dislike Hermione's depiction in the movie versions of the Harry Potter stories. I can't get on board with that. I'm not sure that I can ever really satisfyingly see that perspective. I love her. I think she's terrific. I think she's fantastic. She is certainly served poorly by some of the material, but for me, the performance always eclipses the material. Yes. Emma Watson, says Gildarts Winters, cannot sing, but she is great, which, yes, makes that Beauty and the Beast live action adaptation an odd choice. God, it makes that movie an odd choice in like a million different ways, but someday we'll talk about that. Yes. Yeah. Jeff says, dislike Emma Watson? What? I know, but there are people who do. Yeah. Yeah. Elizabeth says, I love Emma Watson personally, but she drives me crazy as Hermione, very huffy. I can see that. I can see like there is a very specific kind of personality quirk to this vision of Hermione that is distinct from the books, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. But I generally find it very charming, and I'm quite won over by huffy women, it turns out. Yeah. I also love the way that Cuarón shoots the Quidditch sequences here. So that shot there of the cloud forming the Grim and then fading away, and we get Harry relegated suddenly to an inconsequential position in the bottom right of the frame. So gorgeous. The magnitude of the cloud bank here, the enormity of this omen of death, and of course it is followed immediately by the pursuit of the snitch and the icing of the broom and the presence of the Dementors blasting through the return of the umbrella there. Completely unnecessary, completely gorgeous. Blasting through the bank here to see not the umbrella behind him, but a far more sinister, dark shape. Yeah, it's pretty good there. Good. Natalie says, Emma Watson's Hermione is a little less squeaky and shrill than Rowling describes her sometimes. Yes. Yeah. The Ocean Palace calls out almost an hour into the discussion. You guys, we are 55 minutes into this movie. This is flying by like Harry on some kind of broomstick that's infinitely better than the Nimbus 2000. We'll maybe get to that later. Yeah. Good. Yes. Allison says, it's amazing the difference between the Quidditch shots in this movie and the first. The first is so bad compared to this one. Right. And it's not the evolution of the special effects, right? It's not the evolution of the CGI compositing. I mean, okay, actually, yeah, it is partly that, because this really was the time when we were learning how to do that and make it look fantastic. But everything that is happening here, as we zoom in there on Dumbledore pointing up as Harry falls, and hashtag not my Dumbledore, right? But he's pointing up as Harry falls, and the compositing there is really shaky. Like if you pause it on that shot, you can see that these people are clearly not in any kind of, Quidditch amphitheater tower. That's just not where they are. It doesn't look particularly good, but because of the way that it's composed and lit, and because of the way that the camera is moving, and because of the amount of time that we spend lingering on it, it works. It works beautifully. It's just gorgeously done. Harry falls, loses consciousness. We get that irising in of the eye effect there as he loses consciousness and then awakes in the infirmary. Harry back in the infirmary. I love the Gothic architecture of this infirmary. Of course, this infirmary should have this Gothic architecture. These windows are incredible. And the old kind of 1940s cast iron, industrial beds here, just perfect. Just perfect. And Ron delivering the bad news about Harry's Nimbus broomstick here. It was consumed by the Whomping Willow. It was torn asunder by the Whomping Willow. And again, a hard cut here. Harry and Professor Lupin walking in the forest. How much time has passed? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, really. Time has passed. This is a structural, virtue of movies. This is just something that movies get to do with more ease and facility and fluidity than novels get to do. Every medium has its own strengths and weaknesses, and Cuarón plays to the strengths of his form far more, I would argue, than Christopher Columbus did. Yeah. Yes, Angela says, the way the sequence is done between his passing out and waking, wonderful. I'm so good. All the kids painted up is so cute, says Becca. I know. I love Quidditch crowd scenes, arguably more than I love Quidditch scenes themselves. Yeah. Hashtag not my broom, says Bryn. Good. Very good. Yes. Yes. Oh, It Don't Connect is calling out. I love Fred/George's sorry face. Bloody blah, life goes on. Yeah. A lack of empathy from Fred and George, one might say. Proof positive of sociopathic tendencies. You decide. Actually, I don't think you get to decide in the frame of this book. Pretty sociopathic. But as I say, they will kind of orbit back around. It's always difficult when we're talking about Harry Potter, when we're talking about, I'm just going to comment on this transition of the theme coming up as we have that pan into winter, that pan into snowfall as the owl passes. Beautiful, unnecessarily beautiful. And then the focusing in on the window of the astronomy tower there, of the clock tower rather, just gorgeous. Harry framed, bracketed. You see the way that I was talking about the bracketing of set elements earlier to kind of constrict the frame to make us feel more of what Harry is feeling. Here he is not just bracketed by the physical mechanism of the clock face itself, but the hand itself passes across. He is bound now by the passing of time. He is literally missing out. Fred and George grabbing Harry in the invisibility cloak. Very good. And I love the snow effects too. Just gorgeous. Yeah. Let me see. Oh, Mitchell says, spoilers for Goblet of Fire. I'll edit this just in case you're listening to the podcast and you haven't yet read Goblet of Fire. In the movie for Goblet of Fire, Mitchell says, I love the juxtaposition of the kids painted up and the band playing when Harry returns. Yes. Yes. Gorgeously done. This is one of the reasons that I see Goblet of Fire as being a post-transition novel rather than a mid-transition novel. It's not liminal. I don't love the emphasis on the I solemnly swear that I'm up to no good there. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Nah, yeah, nitpick, but there it is. There it is. And Kate says, I've never noticed all the time stuff in this film before. I love it. Yeah, and here we are with what is, gosh, arguably one of the greatest props ever made for anything. I mean, not just the physical prop, of course, but the digital augmentation of that prop. The Marauders map is a thing of beauty and genius. I love this thing so much. As distinct from the roll of parchment that Rowling obviously envisions in the novel, all of these multiple fold-out expansions for Hogwarts, just gorgeous. There's also a little Easter egg if you have the high-res video in front of you, if you have the Blu-ray version and you can zoom in, you will see that one of the little flags moving as Harry opens it up is one Newt Scamander. Definitely canonically not at Hogwarts at the time, but yeah, just a little Easter egg for those of us. Good. Leo asks, I never figured out how Fred and George figured out how to use it, though. Yeah, that's fair question. How did they get it? How did they figure out how to use it? There weren't any of the Marauders present. Is this institutionalized information? I mean, we never get an account of what happened to the Marauders map when it passed out of the hands of the Marauders, I guess. Like, we don't know the intermediate steps there. So maybe, yeah. Yes, Erica says, I'm so impressed with the Marauders map because it actually physically separates, no special effects. Right. The physical prop of the Marauders map is a thing of wonder and beauty unto itself. Never mind the digital augmentation, which is just so gorgeous. The typography and the moving footsteps, just the ink on parchment texture of it. Spectacular. Yeah. Stephanie says, this is actually really interesting. I always felt that Fred and George are so similar to the Marauders that they intuited how to use it. I kind of like that. Well, what would we say if we wanted to activate the Marauders map? Yeah, that's not bad. I like that. Good. Yes. I still like it, says Becca, when Fred and George talk in unison. Yes, I do too. Yeah. Matthew says, why couldn't Newt be visiting? Possibly, theoretically, but he is canonically not at Hogwarts. Like, this has been clarified by Rowling in the aftermath of this film's release, and is in fact, I believe, on Pottermore. It is canonical that he is not in fact at Hogwarts at this time. It is just an Easter egg, yeah. Oh, Brian has faltered behind because of the deleted scenes. I can understand that. That's okay. Yeah. Oh, Lizzie says that her 3-month-old baby girl just woke up and is smiling and cooing at the TV screen, a sign that I watch these movies too much. I love the idea of a generation of children coming up with Harry Potter as just the audiovisual soundtrack of their youth. Perfect. I can't imagine a better series to just watch over and over again while you're kind of, moving through the latter stages of pregnancy. Just kind of sink into this world. That sounds pretty good to me, he said, as someone who has never been and will never be pregnant. But still, to me, intellectually, that sounds like it would be a good thing. Elizabeth can probably offer us a perspective on that, I'm sure. Allison says, I love the beat of Hermione and Ron hanging out by themselves. Awkward. Yes, I like it very much. The chemistry between Hermione and Ron, necessarily visual, right? Necessarily present here. And even here, as we transition into Hogsmeade, which is spectacularly magical, particularly in the snow, we're panning past the shot of Sirius Black. He is intruding not just upon Harry's experience of the world, but upon the physical frame of the film. He's actually kind of breaking into our experience too. So we're about to move into the Three Broomsticks. We're about to get to the nightmare exposition scene, but I have to say this is an adaptive choice that I like. I would perhaps have adapted a little more freely and done something else with this hell scene in order to communicate the necessary information to Harry and the others, but I do like at least that they're not just talking in the common room of the pub here. They are at least secluded away. It's pretty lovely, actually, yeah. Oh, Leo says, my daughter always recognized the Star Trek The Next Generation theme after she was born from me watching the show every day of my pregnancy. That's perfect. I love that. See, Elizabeth here, no longer teacher's pet, really challenging her position here as teacher's pet. Heard my name and wasn't listening in class. We were just talking about watching Harry Potter a lot while you were pregnant and wondered if you had a perspective to offer, Elizabeth. But don't worry, if you're distracted with other things, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to stay tuned through the whole thing. I know that you listen religiously to the podcast after the fact anyway, yes. Let me see. A little unnecessary sarcasm. I do apologize there. Let me see as I scroll through the list to try and catch up. Good. Lizzie says, I caught up to Chamber of Secrets podcast during the last 2 months of my pregnancy. Baby girl loves Dear Mr. Potter almost as much as I do. Oh, that's just lovely. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful thing. I will also call out the brilliant Julie Christie here as Madame Rosmerta. I love Julie Christie. She's fantastic. A little underused here, but this is the point in the Harry Potter series at which we are really, the movies are established, the franchise is established, the novel series is, a pop cultural force of nature at this point. And so we are able to fill even these relatively inconsequential roles with the great and the good of British acting, right? Every notable British actor has basically been in Harry Potter. If you play the celebrity game, I don't know if everyone plays the celebrity game or if this is just a thing I was introduced to when I moved to Oklahoma. The celebrity game consists of a group of people sitting around naming a movie and a celebrity who was in that movie. And then the next person in the line has to name an actor who was in that movie. And then you kind of continue kind of bouncing from actor to actor through a daisy chain of movies. And Harry Potter will just end the game, because at that point it's okay, let's just presume that we'll name every British actor who is working at this period, and then we'll kind of get back to that. Yes, good. Let me see as I catch up with the chat. Oh, the Ocean Bella says, I'm not watching the movie right now, but I'm having so much fun. This is great. I'm so glad. This is wonderful. Then Natalie asks, why is Harry always really loudly mouth breathing under the invisibility cloak? Like, dude, they can still hear you. Yeah, Harry needs to work on that a little bit. Like just a little chill, Harry, like a little yogic breathing, something that can just calm you and cool you. Yeah. It Don't Connect says the British actors that aren't in the Harry Potter movies are super salty about it. There's a great story about Sir Ian McKellen. Sir Ian McKellen was approached to play Dumbledore following the death of the untimely and tragic death of Richard Harris. And he turned it down. He turned it down for two reasons. Firstly, because he had already played Gandalf, and like, dude, the overlap. Though his response to that was, I've already played one epic figure of myth. I can't bear the burden of playing another, which I completely understand. Also, the overlap may be a little too much. It's just, when you need a beardy wizard, go to Sir Ian McKellen. That's a great choice. But much more importantly, Sir Ian McKellen stepped back from the role in part because Richard Harris, during his time upon this earth, had criticized Sir Ian as a terrible actor. And obviously, Sir Ian, I hope, doesn't agree with that interpretation of his skill and his talent and his art and his craft, but felt that it would be disingenuous, that it would be disrespectful to step into Richard Harris's role when Richard Harris was avowedly not a fan of Sir Ian. So Richard Harris could be wrong about some things, is what we can say. Obviously, I would have loved to see Sir Ian. I would have loved to see Sir Ian play Dumbledore. That would have been magnificent. But yes, good. Oh, I would have loved to see Hugh Grant too, says Erica. See, this is just turning into the name British actors that weren't in Harry Potter. You are right. Hugh Grant, I've always thought, could have played a fantastic Gilderoy Lockhart. Like just a brilliant Gilderoy Lockhart. He was born to play that role. It would have worked just fantastically, yeah. I'm anticipating Kendall right there in the chat who's catching up with me. Hugh Grant would have made a really marvelous Lockhart. I completely agree, obviously, because I just said it. There we are. Good. This set is just fantastic. This is one of those sets that will recur. It will be adapted as we move forward through the series, but it will recur as we move forward, and that's a wonderful thing. Fearless's presence and investment in these moments, just fantastic. Yeah. Patrick Stewart as Dumbledore, says Dylan. Oh, interesting. Gildart says, I would have loved to see Jim Dale as Dumbledore. Yeah. Let me think. Patrick Stewart as Dumbledore. I'm not sure that Patrick Stewart can bring immediately the warmth that I want from Dumbledore. I think he would have given us a kind of Gambon Dumbledore, right? He would have given us a harder Dumbledore. Tamara says Patrick Stewart is Alistair Stevens. Yes, when we do the movie version of Dear Mr. Potter, and we just have a story about a guy talking a lot about Harry Potter on the internet, I guess Patrick Stewart can play me. Or ideally, we'll do a biopic of Patrick Stewart and I'll play him. That could also work, you know. I've been working on my Picard maneuver. I can just tuck my shirt down. It'll be fine, yeah. Good. Love the creepy bone candles, observes Stephanie Smith. Yeah, you guys, all of the set dressing, fantastically detailed, fantastically precise, fantastically acute, just utterly delightful. Yeah, good. What is this space, says Katie? This is what will ultimately become the astronomy tower, I think. That's always been my reading. Looking at the orreries moving above them, it seems as though this is the astronomy tower, and it will be adapted, but there are some kind of spatial connections between this set and what will become the astronomy tower later. I'm not sure that that's right, but that's always been my reading of it. Yeah, good. Lupin's calm engagement, says Lizzie, in teaching Expecto Patronum, so amazing, so much love. I completely agree. Mitchell points out, Dear Mr. Potter, the musical. You guys have seen a Harry Potter musical, right? Everyone has seen a Harry Potter musical. Like the two fan works that everyone has seen are a Harry Potter musical and Potter Puppet Pals. Like everyone's seen that, right? You should go and check that out. It's actually surprisingly difficult to get hold of on the internet now. You might be able to find it on YouTube. It's generally uploaded to YouTube and then taken down pretty quickly because it's not very solid in its respective copyright. But yeah, it is very smart. Good. Excellent. Yes, Lupin does the candle trick that we see Dumbledore do at the beginning. Yes, good. Yeah, Potter Puppet Pals, we're calling that out too. Excellent. Becca says, I want to borrow all of Lupin's sweaters. His sweater game, on point. He looks like cozy Professor Dad, right? Like he looks like this. Yes, if this role were not already full by Arthur Weasley, full thanks to Arthur Weasley, Lupin would be your wizard dad. Everyone would want Lupin to be their wizard dad. Good. And of course, we've had the first successful casting of the Patronus charm there. Powerful stuff. Good. And now we're calling out the just random lines from things on the internet. Yes. Katie says, oh my God, no, I haven't. Yeah, do check those out. Yes. A Harry Potter musical and Potter Puppet Pals. That'll keep you going till Christmas at least. Yeah, good. Lupin and Oz prove that werewolves do have fashion style, says Angela. Yeah, I wonder if Lupin would ever replicate Oz's infamous Halloween costume, where he just wears the little name tag that says God. That's his costume. Pretty cool. Yeah. Good. Can we pause to watch PPP, says Matthew? Probably not pause. I'm not sure that I could do an entire commentary track for Potter Puppet Pals 2, but we can get together some other time and watch that, certainly. Yes. Good. Yes. Yes, the fearsomeness of the Dementors, absolutely powerful at this point. Again, moving through this space, right? This is something that we couldn't do in the Christopher Columbus movies. We've established this courtyard space, this fantastic courtyard space, as not just a geographical, connection between the inside and outside of Hogwarts. That makes it a functional space in and of itself. But we've also invested it now with a certain amount of creativity and a certain amount of presence. It is not just connective, but is specific. And I love that. Hagrid in his little short pants there, skimming stones on the lake. Yeah. Here again, look, you see how we've got Hagrid in extreme close-up. We're not really doing that compositing thing. If you didn't know that Hagrid was, 11 feet tall, you wouldn't know that he was 11 feet tall, right? He's just shot in isolation, which I get. I understand that we don't necessarily want to lean on that compositing, but yeah, it's good stuff. Let me see here as we continue. Good. Yes. Excellent. As I try and keep up with the YouTube chat here. My goodness, the chat is both moving very quickly and also kind of moving inconsistently, so I do apologize. Yes, Elizabeth says, Hagrid's hairy suit, woof, the tie is too bad though. Silly. Yeah, I'm not sure about the tie either. It feels as though even Hagrid would know that was silly, right? Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. Elizabeth and I have had some long conversations about Hagrid and the way that he is gosh, infantilized by the series as a whole. It's true. Yeah, good. Angela says, with her regular beautiful acuity, space is filled with life and living and lived in. Yes, there it is. Perfect. I love very much Harry's fondness of Ron in that moment as Ron awakes from his nightmares. You tell the spiders, Ron. There's an affection there, which I really like, and which we don't always get in the books. I feel as though, and this is partly, a product because we're not going to take time in the books to have a little brief conversation because that's, half a page or whatever, and it would feel as though it would interrupt the pace too much, but we can do that in a second in the movie. So it's much less weighty. It's much less, narratively not significant, but intrusive, I suppose. But instead we get these little beats of genuine affection between Harry and Ron and Harry and Hermione and Ron and Hermione. And the dynamic is just more developed, I think, in the movies, which I like quite a lot. It is certainly, expanded from implicit relationships in the book and even explicit relationships in the book. But in the book, we get the big beats. And in the movies, we tend to get the big beats and a handful of little beats, which also serve to kind of foster that. It's pretty good. Yeah. Good. Katie says, later Ron mentions that Harry talks in his sleep to BFFs. I completely agree. So here we are, halfway point of the movie, pretty much halfway point of the structure of the movie, an hour and 15 minutes in. Peter Pettigrew on the Marauders map here. Someone is moving through the halls of Hogwarts and is moving apparently unseen. But now we're going to interrupt it with Severus Snape. Look at that typography is amazing. The digital effects on the Marauders map just make me so happy, so powerfully happy. And again, we've got the light and the dark. The way here that we bracket that shot with the walls of the hall, but it's not just the walls of the hall, because the walls are paneled with the portraits. We get the succession of vertical lines, which is itself constricting as we move back down. It's this kind of not a forced perspective exactly. It's kind of an exaggeration of the perspective there. It feels, very, very purposeful and structured in a way that, in other parts of the castles, the portraits certainly aren't hung with such regularity. And I think even arguably in this hallway, the portraits aren't hung with such strict regularity. But in that moment, as we're looking down past Severus Snape into the inky blackness, we've got the wand illuminating just his face. It's enormously powerful, yeah. And of course, the vertical lines there receding into blackness, somewhat symbolic of the bars of Azkaban. This is symbolic, representative at least, of these notions of imprisonment. The degree to which Harry is imprisoned now is constrained by the boarding school adventure story. We're reaching that turning point. We're reaching the point at which Harry is simultaneously beginning to break free, but also more constrained than ever by the limits of the juvenile fiction that is unfolding before us. Yeah. My dad didn't strut, says Leo. I love that as a line. I love it as a line. I love the delivery, the whole thing, just fantastic. And then, of course, the way that Lupin just inserts himself, just slides into frame there at the back. Gorgeous. Yeah. I love the formality of Severus Snape here. I have just confiscated a rather curious artifact from Mr. Potter. Just ready to go. See, the real thing that I want to do right now is just listen to every word that David Thewlis says. And this is a problem with commentary tracks. When you're doing a commentary track for a movie that you really like, the temptation is just to start watching the movie. And that's actually bad for audio, it turns out. Just a 3-minute long period of silence while I watch this film and just enjoy. I'll just watch this film and sip my Manhattan, and you guys can just, chat amongst yourselves for a bit. Yeah. Good. Good. Yes, it don't connect. Harry should have kept reading from the map and not made eye contact with Snape as he said that. Interesting. Good. Angela points out, everything is living, breathing, moving, asymmetrical and creepy and hidden and disappearing and revealed light and darkness and shadows. This is just some spontaneous poetry there from the wonderful Angela Lurie, but absolutely right. Becca also points out Snape is so good at being terrible. That he is. Yes. Kendall asks a really interesting question. I wonder if this was programmed, so to speak, for Snape himself or anyone who tried to figure out the map. The fact that Lupin is so casual about this being a joke parchment that insults anyone who tries to read it suggests that that is, in fact, something that exists in the world of Harry Potter, right? That is at least within the bounds of speculation. That is something that could conceivably exist, and more importantly, could conceivably convince Severus Snape that this isn't any kind of super significant map of the grounds of Hogwarts. Shut up, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm inclined to believe that, yes, there probably are joke slips of paper. There were probably, I don't know, fortune cookies that you can get that just, you crack it open and the little inscription inside insults you personally. I would imagine that occurs in the wizarding world. Yeah, good. This is bad plot development in the movie. It's never explained how Lupin knew about the Marauders map. Yes, though I would argue that that Lupin's direct personal knowledge of the Marauders map is less significant than it would need to be in order to be explained, if that makes sense. I don't think it would hurt, but yes, fair criticism, certainly. Yes, good. Yes, no, Kendall says, but the map knows Snape has an abnormally large nose, so it seems so Snape-driven. No, absolutely, but I think that the enchantment would actually be a specific response, right? It would be, oh no, like it has a sensitivity to whoever is holding it, something. Perhaps it discerns like his own worst fears about his personal appearance, Is Snape conscious of his abnormally large nose? Is it exaggerating that? Does it have some just ability to tap into other insults that other people think? Perhaps it's leveraging Harry's internal criticism of Snape or something, some kind of enchantment. Magic gonna magic, I guess, is where we are. Yeah. Yes, good. Let me see. Back to Sybil Trelawney and Hermione's complete contempt for divination class. Just perfect. Yeah, good. Yes, it don't connect says adore Hermione's sass here. Yes, big fan. The little slap there as she dismisses everything and storms out of the room, pretty great as the crystal ball rolls down that hallway. And again, look at that hallway, completely constrained, right? We're focused in on the doorway at the end. We do a lot of this kind of vertical bracketing. This does actually seem to be an element in Cuarón's just visual style. He just likes that as a motif, but it is everywhere in this film. And within the bounds of this film, it also, regardless of whether it is an element of Cuarón's visual style, his particular kind of visual language here, regardless of the degree to which it is dependent on him as a director, it also definitely speaks to that constraint, speaks to imprisonment, speaks to restriction, all of these powerful thematic elements which are so important to this unfolding story. Yeah. Yes, Karen points out, yes, Leo and Karen both point out that it addresses Professor Snape, so it is certainly reactive in the sense that it understands who Snape is now. This was not programmed as a response to the Snape of old, right? The Marauders themselves did not program this to respond to Snape's intrusion specifically, but yeah, that's fair. Mitchell says, how in the heck did that ball not crack? Magic ball. Mitchell, that's how that works. Yes. Good. Good. All the poofs and carpet, says Natalie, responding to the open question of why it didn't break. Yes, fair. An excellent delivery of the prophecy here. This is also as we discussed when we were talking about this passage in the book, this is one of the more interesting narrative choices that J.K. Rowling makes in Prisoner of Azkaban. This is direct foreshadowing of what is to come. This is not directly relevant to this. And the same can be said in a way, or to an extent, about the presence of Voldemort himself throughout the story. He's present, but he's present at one remove. He's present in memory and in reference and as a dark specter, as a potential power out there in the world, but crucially not present firsthand. That's enormously significant and indicative of Rowling's plans for the series as a whole. Yeah. The subtitle track says, It Don't Connect says, eerie multiple voices to describe how Trelawney sounds. That's pretty great. I'll take eerie multiple voices. Angela points out, unlike iPhones, fortune tellers' crystal balls are tough and hard to crack. It's that Gorilla Glass, right? She's got the Gorilla Glass crystal balls after, I mean, she's handing them over to children. So who knows what can happen, right? Yes, the little cough at the end is perfect, says Katie. Yes, absolutely. Good. Let me check back on Twitter and see what's going on here. Where are we? Oh, no, nothing else on Twitter. That's good. Okay, that's fine. The conversation is staying focused. That's wonderful. Yeah. Angela's pointing out that the prophecy is wonderfully creepy. I'm inclined to agree. And Kendall says, I love that the series is so playful and dismissive of divination as a subject, but she makes so many accurate predictions. Yes. Okay. I again just don't want to talk over the scene because this is Hermione's greatest moment. The story told here, of course, the big adaptation here is that Hermione does not slap Draco Malfoy, she punches Draco Malfoy, which is pretty great. When they were performing the scene for the first time, it was supposed to be a slap. This was not actually a conscious transition. I love that moment so much. This was not a conscious adaptive choice by Cuarón or by anyone else who worked on the script. It was supposed to be a slap. They were supposed to be doing the bit straight from the book. The first time she delivered it, though, she slapped him really hard. And the problem is that the way that the shot is composed, the way that they wanted the shot to look, the slap is much harder to pull than the punch. The punch goes toward his nose, but there's a good, 6, 8, 12 inches between Hermione's fist and Draco Malfoy's nose when they're shooting it. But the slap is harder to fake in that shot with that composition. So that is why the decision was made to switch it out to a punch. Doesn't matter. The interpretation that we are moving from a more feminine mode of assault into a more masculine, or not more masculine, into a less gendered mode of assault for Hermione is every bit as substantial and true as it ever was. This is death of the author in operation, right? It doesn't matter why the decision was made. The decision was made. And when we interpret the text, we get to interpret the punch and not the slap. The slap is girlish. The slap is uniquely feminine. This is oftentimes feminine aggression. Female aggression is often, no matter how well justified, reduced to this slap cat fight kind of nonsense. That's not Hermione Granger. That's not how she does. How she does is to punch Draco full in the face. It's pretty perfect. Yeah. Yes. Katie points out, finally, Hagrid standing next to someone. Yeah, that's, it does happen from time to time. And the way that we're folding in the Time Turner plot here is just a thing of beauty. Yes. Good. It's the greatest, says Erica, that she uses her fists instead of magic. And just a lot of Hermione is the best. The punch is the best. Yes. Here comes everyone's favorite part, says Kate. Here comes the punch. Love it, says Jeff. Yes. And It Don't Connect says, in rehearsal for the scene, Emma Watson actually slapped Tom Felton. Yeah, she apparently slapped the hell out of Tom Felton, and he was not prepared for it. Like, apparently it was, yes, quite a blow from young Hermione to young Draco there. And Kildarts Winters asks, why didn't Hermione kick Draco in his crystal ball? Well, because it wouldn't have shattered. I think if you're going to deliver a kick, you really want that crystal ball to shatter. And as we know, crystal balls are shatterproof. Yeah. Good. Everything's the best, says the Ocean Palace. And I'm inclined to agree. You know what? I think you're right. Yes. Stephanie says, on the other hand, I would love to see Hermione take a slap and transform it into a powerful symbol of aggression. Oh, that's good. That's interesting. I think we could do that, but it would have to be done with such thoughtful intentionality, and I'm not sure that the intentionality would be there without it being an adaptive choice, right? If the original book had said Hermione then punched the hell out of Draco's nose, and the choice was made, no, actually not a punch, let's make it a slap, then there would have been a thoughtfulness, a consciousness, and intentionality behind it that would perhaps have led to that being a bold choice. But in the absence of that adaptive decision, I'm not sure that it would have worked perfectly. I fear that we would have left it just as a slap, and a slap as, yeah, a weirdly gendered assault. I recently watched the what about a backhand, says Gildarts Winters. Yeah, a backhand would have worked particularly well. Yes, I think that would have worked. I recently watched the recent live action Power Rangers movie. I know, an odd segue away from Dear Mr. Potter, but there's a beat right at the beginning of that film where our protagonist, while defending one of the other, actors in the ensemble, while the Red Ranger, while defending the Blue Ranger, they're not Rangers yet, but they will be very soon, slaps a bully. He slaps him across the face, and the bully blinks and says, "Did you just slap me?" And the guy replies, "Yeah, wasn't that weird?" And it's dismissive of this particular mode of assault because specifically this typical mode of assault is associated with women. So I'm very glad that we degender Hermione's assault on Draco, as I've discussed before. Yeah, good. Scabbers here escaping the fall of the executioner's axe. Again, we're going to circle back around to all of this in just a little bit. We're almost an hour and a half into this movie, you guys. We've got about 45 minutes left before we hit the credits, which, gosh, it does feel like this is just racing along. This has been so much fun already. This is wonderful. Let me see here. Yes, Scabbers is out, says it don't connect. Yes, yeah. And Allison says, I love Hermione hugging Ron. Yeah, I love that moment too. And here, the manifestation of the Grim, the black dog. Here we are. Interrupting Ron and Scabbers here and dragging Ron away. I like the way that this is constructed. I like the way that it is framed. I love the way that it is shot. Sirius Black in his dog form, threatening, like genuinely threatening. I love it. Good. Let's see. The accent to the pumpkin reminds me of Halloween, says Gildarts. Yes. And Elizabeth says the physical affection within the trio charms me. Right? Like this is exactly what I'm talking about. We get, of course, the big beats, but we're not going to take 2-3 lines of prose on the page to say, and then Ron and Harry and Hermione had a hug, and it was a really good hug. It was like a supportive hug, but also a respectful hug. It was the kind of hug that you give to people who are going to be in your life forever. It was a good, solid hug, you guys, a good, solid hug. We're just not going to do that in the pages of the book. It's informed. It's there for us to read into, certainly, but it's not made explicit. Here in the movie, because it doesn't take any extra time, we get to make it explicit. This is the benefit of film as a visual medium, And also, I suppose you could argue film as a performative medium too, right? We're getting so much more humanity and humanism and humanness from these actors because they're human beings. So we get the full thing. Harry losing his glasses here, a beat that makes me nuts. That is a Scooby-Doo beat here in this story. I'm not in love with it, you guys. And it's kind of surprising that we don't go to that well more often. It's kind of surprising that doesn't happen 3 times in every film, but I'm very glad that it doesn't. Yeah. Though I do love here that when he loses his glasses, we actually get a rare Harry Potter POV shot in this movie. We get to see the Whomping Willow in blurred focus, just to kind of emphasize what it is that Harry's experiencing in that moment. Yeah, good. Let me see here. This is some inside baseball here, but Elizabeth is pointing out Rupert Grint equals Alan Beck. Endearing. Alan Beck is a real life friend of ours here in Oklahoma City. So, I mean, yes, 1000% yes. If you guys haven't yet listened to the Odd Man Out podcast from Common Room Radio, I suggest that you do. If you want a real life Ron Weasley in your life, not a real life Ron Weasley, that's actually not fair, but a real life Rupert Grint, absolutely go listen to Odd Man Out with Elizabeth and the wonderful Sarah Kate Pazant and the brilliant Alan Beck, who is not on the internet anywhere. He just doesn't have a Twitter account. He may as well, for our digital purposes, not exist. Otherwise, I would at him and hashtag him and do all kinds of things digitally to him. But he's a genuinely lovely guy, and the Odd Man Out podcast is a delight. Yes, and has a Harry Potter episode. Yeah. Yes, Allison says it makes me think of the scene in DH where Harry and Hermione dance. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's one of my favorite movie scenes ever. Their friendship is great. Completely agreed. I love that sequence. I love it because it is exactly what it appears to be. It isn't more than that. It is 2 great friends delighting in each other and finding solace and comfort in each other, but a non-romantic or not primarily romantic solace and comfort in each other. I love that sequence. I'm a big fan. I'm a defender. Yes, good. Good. Great intro shot of Sirius, says Stephanie. Yes. Friendship is magic in all caps, says the Ocean Palace. Couldn't agree more. I love this moment when, yes, when Lupin pulls Sirius to his feet and they embrace. And Lupin is kind of, he's moderating Sirius in this moment. It's a strong moment. Yeah. Hey, look, it's Sirius, says Becca. Yeah, it's good to have him here. It's very good to have him here. Gary Oldman does a frankly spectacular job with Sirius Black, right? I mean, is there anyone in the world who doesn't love this performance, who doesn't appreciate this? I'm sorry, I'm distracted by I did my waiting 12 years of it beat in Azkaban. The manic desperation that we get from Sirius Black here, absolutely representative of, and yet again, an evolution of the Sirius Black that we get on the page. Most of the dialogue is different. Most of the dialogue is refined. It is distilled, and I love that. And of course, God knows it should be, because that is a long chapter with these dudes just talking to each other in this room. Good, strong, adaptive choices. I like it a lot, yeah. Yes, he's a fantastic Sirius, says Angela. Yes, I did my waiting, says Kendall in all caps. Yeah, some things need to be in all caps. It's true. Good. Dylan says this is not Gary Oldman's best Sirius. I'm inclined to agree. Yes, I'm not sure that he's best at his most manic. I love avuncular Sirius, honestly, more than anything else. Almost avuncular Sirius, I guess. But yeah. I like the screaming. I like the rage. I like the mania. I like how the way that he moves, that holding of the hand there, just balanced, is it's gorgeous. It's all very clipped. It's all very precise. It's all very, there is that sense of someone who is holding on to something. This also gives us a movie beat of which I am not terribly fond, which is the wand to the throat. Why are wands at the throat more dangerous than wands at, oh, I don't know, any arbitrary distance? We're treating wands sometimes like they're blades, like they are weapons in and of themselves. But you guys, okay, I'm aware of what I'm saying, and obviously this doesn't track to, this is not supposed to be expanded past the very specific thing that I'm about to say. But you guys, wands don't kill people, people kill people, right? The wand itself is not threatening. The wand at the throat is no more dangerous than the wand here in Harry's hand, all the way across the room. Also, not a fan of Harry incapacitating Severus Snape with the single Expelliarmus. That is not Expelliarmus as we know it. Is Harry, because of his emotional intensity in this moment, channeling more magic into the spell? Possibly. But I actually really like the beat of Harry and Ron and Hermione all casting the spell simultaneously and incapacitating Sirius that way. It's good. Arguably, it does rob Harry of some solitary motivation. And one of the things that the movie wants to do here is separate Harry visibly here, separate Harry from Ron and Hermione in this space. It's very good. And of course, the set design of the Shrieking Shack here, the way that it is all off kilter, the way that it is shot like a set from Batman 66. You know, we get some slightly canted Dutch angles here. We get some odd forced perspective here as the lines of the Shrieking Shack seem to fold in on themselves prematurely. It is a more enclosed space than it seems. It's just gorgeous. Yeah. Oh, Elizabeth says, I've seen this movie a dozen times at least, and this is the first time that I've noticed the shack swaying. Yeah, it's the sound of the shack swaying that I have in my head when I read these chapters in the book. But you're right. Yes. Yeah. Good. Exactly. Matthew points out a wand at the throat can be batted, not from a distance. Correct. A wand at the throat, arguably less threatening than a wand at a distance. Yeah. Good. Good. You can poke someone hard in the throat with that wand, says Stephanie. Yes, I mean, sure. The physical intrusion into the personal space, perhaps more intimidating, but yes, good. So we've had the reveal here of Peter Pettigrew. The transformation is, I mean, genuinely disgusting, like a genuinely gross and difficult thing to watch. It's unpleasant in exactly the way that it should be, but more importantly, we get a particularly what is the word that I want to use? An unpleasant performance from Timothy Spall. Just this is kind of what you go to renowned character actor Timothy Spall for, is this kind of oily obsequiousness. I don't love him in this. It's not the fault of the actor. It's not the fault of the character as written. It's just, yeah, this is the direction you go with Peter Pettigrew. Like this is first thought, best thought casting. And I kind of wish that we'd gone in a different direction with it. I kind of wish that we'd pushed to something a little less obviously grotesque and something a little more, I don't know, adaptive, honestly, right? Just something a little more, a deeper cut than Timothy Spall here. Again, not to take anything away from Timothy Spall at all. Yeah. Yes, Erica says, seeing Pettigrew grab Harry makes my skin crawl as if he were grabbing me. Yes. Oh, Green-Eyed Guide, Danielle says, I would love Smeagol as Pettigrew. Oh, Andy Serkis. There it is, right there, right? Andy Serkis would have been magnificent. He also would have motion capped all of Scabbers. He would have just, I don't know, somehow transformed himself physically into a rat and given us motion capture for Scabbers all the way through. But yes, Andy Serkis would have been a really interesting direction to go with Pettigrew. But right. Yes. Good. Bryn says, it makes it hard to believe the boys would have been friends with him back in the day. Yeah, that's one of the things, right? When Pettigrew returns in the book, it is clear that he has been worn down by a year of pursuit from Sirius Black. Like, Scabbers is sickly at that point, and that's manifested back into his physical form when whatever magical, magical, of course it's magical, whatever unprecedented, unheralded, and hitherto undiscussed, anti-animagus spell is cast upon him to return him to his human form, he's inheriting the physical wear and tear of being Scabbers for all this time. Something a little different. Here. Yes. Golem, says Mitchell with the little asterisks around it. Yes. Sirius out in the air in the night sky, so lovely, says Elizabeth. Right? That transition out of the tunnel into the open air, freedom and all that it represents. The world is open now around Sirius Black, even though he's not free. He does feel, well, okay, what is the burden upon Sirius Black, right? We don't have the same kind of focus in the movie version of the story on crime and punishment, on the bureaucratic fallibility of the ministry, right? We're not led to believe that Azkaban is as performative in the movie as it is in the book. But there's still this open question that is Sirius freed by his escape from Azkaban, or is he freed by justice now with Peter Pettigrew about to be apprehended and the truth about to come out? Yes. This always breaks my heart, says Kendall, the chance for Harry to live with him and be happy versus go to his abusive home. This is all the more powerful, I think, in the movie version, because at least in the book version, we get the chapter, right? We get the Shrieking Shack chapter where we spend a long time with Sirius and Harry talking about stuff. In the movie, that happens real fast, Harry. Real fast, you're ready to consider living with this dude. And now the tragedy of Remus Lupin, the constant tragedy of Remus Lupin. That push into Thulus's eye, the expansion of the iris, and then the pull back out again. Gorgeous, gorgeous. This heart here, too, from Sirius Black. Just wonderful. Yeah. Timothy Spall's physicality there as he leans and picks up the wand and then holds it up, I don't know. Doesn't work for me at all. I will say Timothy Spall works better as Peter Pettigrew in the later movies for me, but yeah, not wonderful. And then of course he transforms back into his rat form, leaving his clothes behind. I don't know what to do with that, you guys. I don't know what to do with the amazing disappearing, reappearing clothes of Peter Pettigrew. No idea. Yes, unless this is a bad version, I suppose, of the Animagus spell. Has he forgotten how to cast, or he is casting the Animagus spell imperfectly at this point? Possibly, arguably. Elizabeth is not feeling great about the werewolf. The werewolf look is so bad. I was disappointed. Chihuahua on steroids, she said. You know what? It's a choice. It's a direction. Like, we've got a visual design here of a werewolf that, yeah, I don't love. Snape here intruding to defend the power trio. Pretty great. Alan Rickman just effortlessly knocking it out of the park. Yes, as Lizzie says, but when he becomes human again, clothes appear. What? My kind of personal headcanon for this is that when he transformed himself back after betraying James and Lily, he was more skilled as an animagus. So he manages to transform himself, including his clothing, into his rat form. Thus, when he is de-animagus, the clothing returns. But now it's been 12 years. He's forgotten how to cast this spell. He doesn't, or at least he is casting it imperfectly. And that transforms him, but not the clothing. And thus the clothing is left behind. Yeah. Angela says he could be casting it imperfectly because he was forced out of his rat form. That's a good pull too. Or perhaps the amazing, as I say, undiscussed anti-animagus spell also just includes a parenthetical, and for the love of God, put some clothes on. Like, stop being an animal, but don't be naked, because that would be weird. We're really looking for a PG rating for this movie. Yeah, not more, please. That would be really bad. Yeah, good. Yes, one quick moment of goodness from Snape, says Katie, calling it out here. It's not just goodness, though, is it? It's a kind of selfless goodness. It's pretty great. This is, again, informed in the book, but evolved here in the movie. And by the way, when I talk about informed in the book and evolved in the movie, that is not to suggest that movies are inherently better than books. I'm quite fond of books, you guys, just to be clear. But any adaptation that comes after a previous, any adaptation, right? Any text that follows on the heels of another text gets to refine the approach. It gets to do something different. What stands out for me here about Snape is not that it's a moment of goodness, but it's a moment of selfless goodness. And that suggests that he is, in fact, apropos of nothing, suspicious of, fearful of werewolves. This is not just, the whole werewolf ploy is not just an assault on Lupin. He actually hates werewolves, which, of course, he would for complicated backstory reasons that don't get explored in the movie. But it fits for me. It works for me. And I like him, even in this moment, defending our power trio from Lupin in wolf form. Pretty great. Yeah. There's Hermione's terrible fake howl, says it don't connect. Yeah, you guys, we're closing in on the climax of the movie. I mean, not much happens after this, so we must be done, right? It's not as though we're going to go back and do some of this again. Yeah. Angela says, in all caps for emphasis, it's rare that the movie builds and expands the book as well as this movie. Absolutely true. It don't connect, says, with a laughing emoji here. Alistair, you don't have to reassure us you're a fan of books. Yeah, pretty big fan of books, it turns out. Good. And Katie says, it actually can show that Snape is a true teacher, saving students whomever they are. I agree. I absolutely agree. We're trying not to talk about the Dementors at the lake. I'm trying not to talk about the Dementors at the lake because this is, yeah, horrifying. These Nazgul, at least the Lord of the Rings had the benefit of a limited number of Nazgul, but there are just so many Dementors. I mean, not as many in the book. It would be horribly confusing for that to be true. But there's the kiss. There's the beat. And the escape from Sirius Black of light, of hope, of soul and spirit, these same things which are embodied within the Patronus charm itself, right? There's a reason that light is representative of the antithetical force to the Dementors, right? Light is what wards off the darkness, and light is the embodiment of hope and self and virtue. And you'll remember too, again, great expansion from the book, right? That Lupin talks in the book about one's hope and one's like happy memories and so on and so forth, like one's fierce joy at existence itself being the contrary force against the Dementors' dispiriting ways, and manages to conflate that hope and fierce joy with soul, with spirit, like explicitly in the book. And here we get that encapsulation. It's beautifully, beautifully done. Good. Let me see. Oh, Kate is arguing with Katie. Sorry, Snape has alternate motivations for everything, and being a, quote, true teacher is not one of them. Hey, you guys, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about Severus Snape and where he falls on our ethical spectrum here as we move forward. Yeah. Good. Dylan says, the visual nature of film demands we abandon the more subtle nature of the kiss in the books. Yes, exactly, right? Film demands that we externalize rather than internalize. And in a way, most novels demand that we internalize. The immediacy, the emotional immediacy of a novel is actually one of the most powerful virtues of the form. But that stands in direct contrast with the manifest need of externalization that we get from visual media. Yeah, that's a good pull. That's a good call. Good. Hermione there as Dumbledore bursts in. It's worse, much worse. They're going to suck out his soul. That is canonically and clearly what the Dementor's kiss does. this thing that can be warded off by the hope and virtue and positivity of the Patronus, it does lead to the absence of the soul, which is a very powerful kind of quasi-theological approach to the material here. Not my favorite Michael Gambon moment there. Yeah. Oh, the casual way that he slaps Ron's like, hashtag not my Dumbledore. You guys, can we make t-shirts with hashtag not my Dumbledore? Would it be, is there a way that we can silhouette Richard Harris as Dumbledore and just have him on a t-shirt in a way that it is obviously not Michael Gambon? Can we do that? I don't know. The visual artists among you can probably come up with a way of doing that. But yeah, just a silhouette of Dumbledore's head, hashtag, or I guess what we would want then is a silhouette of Michael Gambon's head, hashtag not my Dumbledore, but then I don't want to wear a t-shirt with Michael Gambon's head on it. Not in this role anyway. A challenge to the t-shirt designers out there among you. If you come up with a great t-shirt design, tweet it at me and I'll retweet it. We can spread the word. Yes. Kindle gets it on a hashtag not my Dumbledore. Yes. Hashtag not my Dumbledore could have been the hashtag for this entire season, except that I love Dumbledore so much in the books. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Don't love it. Ron's, what the bloody hell was all of that about? Fair, actually, Ron, fair. The physicality of the time turner here. The slap, I love. See, the slap is a perfect example, right? The slap takes a heartbeat in the movie, but would take a moment in the books that would be that much worse. Yeah. And now we see the blurring of the world. We're into our time travel plot. Less foreshadowed in the movie than in the books. Still sufficiently foreshadowed in the movie than in the books, but there it is. That forced intimacy too between Harry and Hermione is something that I appreciate quite a lot. That's a good beat there. Yeah, good. A little annoying Dumbledore, says Angela. Yes, I kind of feel that way too. Yeah. So the t-shirt would have to have on the front and the back, right? Gambon on the front, hashtag not my Dumbledore. Harris on the back, hashtag my Dumbledore. Like, maybe just hashtag my Dumbledore would work. Maybe we don't. Maybe we can be positive and not negative, right? That's perfect. We'll have the silhouette of Richard Harris as Dumbledore, hashtag my Dumbledore. Or maybe just hashtag always. I don't know. We can do a few things. Yeah, good. Stephanie says, I do like in the movie they travel only in time, not in space. Always wondered why they moved to the broom closet when time traveling in the book. As Angela clarifies in the very next line here in the YouTube chat, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, always. Yes. Dumbledore is the 8th Doctor, says Gildarts, which is great. Gambon was in Doctor Who. Yes, he absolutely was. Yes. Always my Dumbledore suggests it don't connect. We're moving towards something here. What we're really doing, this is partly a commentary track for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, but mostly this is us just workshopping t-shirt ideas. Yeah. Good. Oh, that's interesting. Erica says very different how they show the time travel in the book versus the movie. The book is very much like a port key, but this just changes around them. The port key connection is an interesting one. Yes, that's good. Like a temporal port key that is adjustable. That's an interesting point of comparison. Yeah, good. I like that. Excellent. Good. Okay, now we're distracted by t-shirt thoughts. So here we have, I am all over this. As I said when we were discussing these chapters, I am all about timelines intersecting and crossing over with each other. I have been ever since, Back to the Future. I'm a big fan of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, huge fan of those movies. Anytime we do this in a time travel story, pick any episode of Star Trek that you like, I am in, but I love the way that it's presented here. This perspective, right? This is why it is important. This is why it isn't just my nerdy obsession with spatial relationships in stories. This is why it's important that Coron has established these spaces, because now we're going to move through these spaces again, but we're not moving through them with regard just to the space itself. We're moving through with a second focal point introduced, the focal point of the previous Hermione and Ron, the previous events that have unfolded in this space. So we need to know this space so that we can move through it with purpose, but still keep that tension, keep that connection. We have to understand not just where they are with regard to their physical environment, which we can see in any given shot, but where they are with regard to their previous selves. We get a different perspective on all of these sets, and I'm a big fan of the way that this is handled. It's very strong. Yeah, so many pumpkins, says It Don't Connect. Yeah, a lot of pumpkins here. Just so many pumpkins. Good. Let me see here. YouTube just scrolled. Johnny's Virtual Journeys. Hi, Johnny. I'm glad that you could join us. I'm going to throw out a vote for Gambon. He took a different approach in the character, but I thought it was good. You know what? Love what you love. I'm into that. I like if you can find a definitive Dumbledorian character within Michael Gambon's performance, then that's great. I'm very, very glad. And you're right. It is in its difference, at least marked, right? The worst thing that could have happened is for this production company to hire Michael Gambon and say, okay, we want you to do this just like Richard Harris. Like that would have been the worst of both worlds. Yeah. Good. Brian says, good Lord, for anyone else who is drinking brandy to coincide with Dumbledore's request, I'll put in a shameless plug for my friend's new brandy called Western Grace. Western Grace brandy. I'm going to have to interrupt my commentary track here just to Google that, Brian. That sounds fascinating. Where does it come from? Tell me more about it. Western Grace brandy, a brandy from La Mancha in Spain. Is that it? That's spectacular. Or at least that was what it said on the quick Google return. Yes. An old world brandy. Wow. Excellent. Well, I hope that you'll send a bottle. You can find the P.O. Box address over at Point North Media. I think if you click the About or the Contact page, one of those pages, it'll have the P.O. Box address. Oh, no, you can't. You can't ship alcohol to Oklahoma. Forget it. Never mind. Raise a glass in my stead, Brian. That would be a great thing to do. Yes. Okay. It Don't Connect. We're throwing stones here, and It Don't Connect says it was incredibly good aim for a bandaged hand. Very true. Very true. And Mitchell says, I was a kid when these films came out, so Gambon was always kind of the lens through which I saw him. That's absolutely fair too, right? I think that in exactly the same way as your first Doctor is oftentimes your definitive Doctor, thus your first Dumbledore is your definitive Dumbledore. And I think that if you come up watching these movies and not caring so much about Richard Harris's performance in the first two movies, then Gambon probably doesn't stand out to you as well. And certainly if the movies are your first point of connection to the world of Harry Potter, I can see Gambon's performance working really quite well for you. Yeah. We are almost an hour and 55 minutes into this movie. Yes. I have had a lot of wine, confesses Leo here. So much fun. You know what? Good for you. Good for you. I'm almost done with my Manhattan here, but you can better believe I'm going to fix another one after I'm done with this live show. As I say, this is going to be the end of hour 5 of podcasting for me today. Hour 5.5 of me podcasting today. That's a lot of hours, you guys. That's a lot of hours of live broadcast. Yeah. Lizzie is calling out. I like this line very much. Lizzie is calling out, is that what my hair looks like from the back? Vain Hermione much? Feels a bit out of character for me. I actually love that beat from Hermione. I completely see the criticism. Does Hermione care what she looks like? Well, maybe not. Maybe not book Hermione. I think that movie Hermione is a little more, self-aware in the sense that she is aware of how people look at her, how people judge her almost, you know? And also no one gets the chance to look at their hair from the back, not naturally, not organically, not in like natural lighting without holding up, 2 mirrors and trying to do a complicated thing. I shave the back of my head, you guys. I get how hard that is. I actually like that quite a lot. Yeah. Good. Yes. Brian is saying Alistair's hair looks awesome from behind. You guys will never see it. I mean, I need to have a mirror behind me, and I feel like that would just be constantly distracting. But yes. I think it's perfect for a 13-year-old girl, says It Don't Connect. Yeah, it's less to me about vanity and more about that thing where you see yourself from the outside perspective, right? When I started podcasting, God, I don't know, a decade ago almost at this point, I went through that thing that everyone goes through where you record your voice and you listen back to your voice and you say, that doesn't sound like me. And I'd spent years prior to that in theater, right? So I'd seen recordings of my own performances and heard my own voice and thought, as everyone does, that doesn't sound like me. And that's a physiological thing. Your voice sounds different when you're less prepared for it. But over the years of doing podcasts and kind of editing my own audio, I have noticed of late that my internal conception of my own voice has kind of caught up to how my voice actually sounds, externally, canonically, in many of the thousands of hours of recordings that I put out on the internet, which is just a weird little thing. That is to say that I think that seeing ourselves from an external perspective, as Byrne said, with the Lord the gift that gives us to see ourselves as others see us, that kind of external perspective on ourselves is always going to be informative, particularly when you're 13. And I would argue particularly when you are a girl in what is kind of a boys' club. And I'm definitely talking about the power trio here, but in a broader sense, we haven't yet hit the point where the girls are possessed of the same agency and presence in the narrative as the boys are. We will get there very soon. Like, we will get there pretty much within Goblet of Fire, but we're not quite there yet. So Hogwarts does oftentimes feel like a boys' club. The Power Trio feels like a boys' club. I'm glad that we can. Yes, Sasha says, I think real and fictional people can think and worry about their appearance without it being a defining feature. There you go. Yes, I'm kind of into that. I support that. Yes, good. We're talking a little about my hair in the chat, which is weird. Yeah, I did used to have long hair. Matthew says, I tried shaving my head once and cut myself to hell. Yeah, because the first time you will, and then the second time you will, and the third time though you will, and the fourth time you really will. Like 10 times you'll get used to it. It's pretty good. I used to just cut it really short with a razor, with like an electric razor, but now I actually shave with a blade, which is much better. Though if you can see in high definition tonight as I'm broadcasting here on the internet, I do need to do it again pretty soon. I'm also just a little scruffy here. Yeah. Yes, Rachel says there are powerful girls in Harry Potter, but there are just so many boys. Yes, and we're just not quite there yet. Not quite there. Good. Good. It Don't Connect says, as an animal nerd, I'm marveling at Buckbeak's ability to belch. Horses can, but birds, as far as I know, can't. So it's interesting. It Don't Connect. What a fascinating observation. Now we have a greater sense of the internal working, the internal mechanism of Buckbeak. I'm so grateful for that. I never thought of that at all. But yeah, good. Okay. It is a weird moment, isn't it? Yeah. Excellent. I'm going to have the very last of my Manhattan now as we move toward the recapitulation of the events at the Whomping Willow as Harry begins to understand what is happening and what is going on, thinking of the life that he's going to have with Sirius Black. When all of this is over, it's going to be great. We're going to go someplace we can see the sky. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. And then there, too, just watching Harry and Hermione, the way that we drain all of the color out and all that is left is light and dark as we push in on their faces there. Gorgeously done. Absolutely gorgeously done. And you'll notice here too, as we're running through the forest, we're not really doing the handheld cinematography thing, right? We're not using a handheld camera in the way that we normally use a handheld camera, which is to impart like a physical immediacy, like a real sense of motion and danger and intimacy with our protagonist. That's not how we use the handheld camera in Harry Potter. Partly, let's be honest, because we have a lot of digital effects. And digital compositing was not quite at the point when Prisoner of Azkaban was released to allow for that kind of on-the-fly compositing with a shaky cam shot. Instead, you can see here as we move through, we're getting dolly shots and tracking shots. It's this very conventional action cinematography at this point. But we preserve instead that shaky cam, that handheld camera work for moments of great emotional intimacy and emotional primacy almost. It works beautifully well. Again, this light and dark, the vertical lines of the tree boles kind of echoing all of the vertical lines that we've had through the cinematography so far. I just love it. Harry and Hermione moving around the tree trunk here, moving away from the light into the dark. So we get these hard, chiaroscuric shadows on their faces. Just, so good. There's so much to just adore in the cinematography of this movie alone. Never mind the performances. And Hermione pulling Harry here backward as, he is a weird looking dude, though. The thing that I do really like about the werewolf design in this is its stark inhumanity when he's on all fours, those weird triple jointed legs as he moves. It's not lupine, if you'll forgive the pun on Lupin's name. There's not my pun, J.K. Rowling's pun on his name. It's not lupine. It's something very, very different. It's something completely other. We're not contrasting outright, the wolf and the dog either in this. We're doing something different, and that's powerful. The glimpse of the Dementors, the wind ruffling the hair as the Dementors pass by, just a consequent effect there of the Dementors. Yeah. Yes, Gildart says being pulled backward is freaking terrifying. Pretty much just always, yes, but being pulled backward towards a werewolf, yeah. Oh, Kendall says, holding hands, hashtag Team Hermie. Oh, it's pretty cute. And Elizabeth says, Daniel Radcliffe is really lovely in this, actually. Suddenly making these subtle choices in his physicality that makes Harry that much more real to me. Yes, this is a very powerful thing to recognize about this film. Okay, I like Daniel Radcliffe just fine in the first two movies. He's full of charm. He's full of pluck. He's full of verve. He does the thing that he is there to do. The transition of Daniel Radcliffe's performance between the second and third films is absolutely stark. He stops being a kid actor in a movie and is just an actor in a movie. And I think Elizabeth is right on the money. All of these little choices, particularly in his physicality, it's a consciousness and an awareness, even as he runs down here and his arms are up and he holds up. Yeah, it's beautiful. And the summoning, of course, of prongs here, I guess. Yes, good. 10 out of 10, my favorite Spooks movie, says the Ocean Palace. Yes. Oh, and Kendall says, hashtag always my werewolf too. Yes. Good. Yeah, Erica asks, with all of these Dementors, why would it not be colder? Their breath to be showing and the trees possibly freezing. Possibly. The Dementors' chilling effect does seem to take time to exert itself, and they're just now marshalling. And it's also not entirely clear how far that influence extends. Was the whole of the Hogwarts Express frozen? I don't know. Yes, I mean, possibly, yes, that's fair. And Mitchell says, how did he not hear himself shouting? Distracted by Dementors, basically. Distracted by Dementors, yes. Oh, Stephanie says, this is so great. This is just bringing everything full circle. Stephanie, you're a genius. Stephanie responds, his voice sounds different outside his own head, right? Harry doesn't recognize his own voice. Of course he thinks it's someone else. Beautiful. Canon, Stephanie. Thank you. I love that. Dylan observes rather poetically, the light casts out the dark. Gorgeous. Then we have the Buckbeak flight sequence where Harry says, does that make sense? And Hermione responds, speaking on behalf of at least some members of the audience, no, but it's, fine. It's fine. We're moving into the conclusion. Yes, as Lizzie says, back to the conversation about how our voice really sounds to others. Yes, that's great. Good. The Buckbeak aerial sequences just stunning. I love the way that these are put together. Buckbeak, a formidable mount, able to carry Hermione, Harry, and Sirius Black. I mean, yeah, solid work here. And again, another aerial shot there where we don't get these disassociated Hogwarts towers as we have in the previous movies. We get an aerial shot of the whole castle, campus. I like campus, actually, the Hogwarts campus. Yeah, I kind of like that. And then here we are back in the bridge. We're returning to these same sets, but the sets are intentional. They are purposeful. The bridge and this area is used as a liminal space. Now, this is literally the threshold space between Hogwarts and non-Hogwarts. This is inside and outside happening right here. I love Hermione just slipping off there to give Harry and Sirius a moment. Pretty good. Yeah. Good. You are so like your father. Except your eyes. Yeah. I just kind of love this. I just kind of adore this whole thing. It's a great moment of connection. It is swift. It is even more swift in the movie than it is in the book, which I completely acknowledge is problematic. And this is one of these things that I would never hold you responsible if the connection between Sirius and Harry doesn't work for you. Like, it is even less motivated than it is in the book, even more swift than it is in the book. But it does work for me. It does. So poignant and beautiful is the reconnection of Harry with his found family that I am, moved by it, stirred by it. As Katie says, I love the touching of the chest. Mitchell says the intimacy in this moment is amazing. Gildart's quotes, I will always be with you here with the hand on the heart. Yeah, just gorgeous. Yeah, at this point, we are now just all quoting lines. I want a big hug, more Harry Potter hugs, please, says Becca. And Rachel says, when was the last time anyone touched his face? When was the last time anyone touched Sirius Black? Was he touched during the time that he was in Azkaban? Probably not. I mean, that period of time without physical human contact, it makes me look back on that first embrace between Lupin and Sirius all the more, all the more sympathetically, I suppose. And then, because this is a movie and we need to raise the drama right before the final climax, the clock is chiming. We have to go. We have to run. You can't ever, resolve a time travel plot with a casual stroll. You need to hurry here. Yeah. Good. Yes, Mitchell says, Harry's wanted nothing but family all his life. The idea he'd grasp for it right away doesn't surprise me. Yes, good. Yeah, Dumbledore's did what? Good night. It feels mocking in a way that I don't love. Yeah. Ron, completely stunned by the idea that people may appear in other places when they were previously in other places, despite the fact that he goes to a wizarding school and learns wizarding. It was magic, Ron. Magic is how we did it. This shouldn't be a surprise to you. And then we cap our turning of the seasons vignettes of the Whomping Willow. How did the Whomping Willow become a character in this movie, you guys? I adore the Whomping Willow, and I really shouldn't. Yes, it's just gorgeous. Yeah. Good. Yes, and Lives with Fred and George, confirms Katie. Right, like nothing should surprise Ron at this point. Yeah, It Don't Connect is calling out too, as we get that little hint there of the theme. I absolutely adore the soundtrack for this movie. John Williams is never not on the money. Completely agreed. John Williams, one of the most consistent artists in the world, not the most prolific, though extraordinarily prolific, but maintains just an amazing standard of work throughout his output. Yeah. And yeah. Lupin leaving again, though, echoing the injustice in the book. This is one of the interesting adaptive choices. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time over the last few weeks discussing the book, talking about crime and punishment, talking about how the book offers a cynical or charitably adult perspective on bureaucracy and the workings of the world. No, this is just how the world is actually, and justice is much more about performance and appearance than it is about actual substance. That's a cynical perspective, perhaps, but it is definitely a perspective that is apparent in the book. That is a possible interpretation of the book. But the notion of crime and punishment all but falls away from the movie. You have to do a pretty deep textual read to get anywhere close to that in the book, in the movie, excuse me. Yeah. Natalie asks, does Ron ever know about the time turner? He was the one who noticed the most that Hermione's schedule doesn't make sense. So I feel like it would be unfair to keep him out of this. Does Ron ever know about the time turner? No? Maybe? I'm not sure. I'm not at all sure. I don't remember an instance where he definitely does. You guys can shout out on this. I get so deep into these individual books. I'm so deep into Prisoner of Azkaban right now that like the future books are these vague shapes. Like I have a sense of the landmarks. They're like icebergs in the mist. I have a sense of where they are and what they are, but I want to stay so focused in Prisoner of Azkaban so that I can do the deep dive textual read, close analysis thing that we do. Yeah. Oh, Dylan says headcanon. She only tells him on their wedding day. That's pretty good. Yeah. Good. Jeff says, I travel 150 days a year. Can I please have Lupin's self-packing case? Oh, wow. 150 days a year? Like, Jeff, that's a lot of days. That's a lot of travel. I love to travel, but that's a lot of travel. I don't know. Yeah. This is a really interesting choice here to recast the Firebolt as a mysterious gift halfway through the book that is then used in the Quidditch final. Moving this to the end, very smart adaptive choice. Very, very bold, strong adaptive choice. I like it a lot. Yeah. Good. 3,000 miles a month, says Jeff. Jeff, my hat is off to you, sir. That is an epic undertaking. Good for you. If you find yourself in Oklahoma City, let us know. Yes. Good. The Ocean Palace says Prisoner of Azkaban is the best book to be the most focused on what you can be. Yeah, exactly, right? This is... Don't love that iris in there right at the end. But I do love these credits. You guys, I cannot believe that we have arrived here at the end of the movie. It's utterly extraordinary. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being here with me for this entire endeavor. I hope that you will let me know. I hope that you will tweet at me or email me, pointnorthmedia@gmail.com, your thoughts on this live commentary format. It's a very different thing. I don't know if it's fun to listen to. I have no way of knowing if it's fun to listen to, so you guys will have to get in touch and let me know. If this is something that you would like me to do for all the movies, or if you would like to continue to refine our approach to commentary tracks and discussions of the movies, that would be great. All of this is to say that this commentary track is not actually the purposeful, thoughtful, well-laid-out discussion of the movie. This is more of an extemporaneous, off-the-cuff, hey, let's all respond and talk about the YouTube chat kind of thing. We're actually going to have a discussion about the movie adaptation next Tuesday evening. That is Tuesday the... let me call it up here, 7th, Tuesday the 7th of November at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. We're going to have our final season 3 episode of Dear Mr. Potter in which we talk about the movie adaptation. We're going to kind of zoom out and talk about this at a higher level, talk about it as an adaptation, talk about it as a piece of art and a piece of narrative unto itself. I will leave you all to enjoy these credits while I go and fix another Manhattan and wrap up a very long day of podcasting. This has been an absolute blast, an absolute pleasure. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you all so much for listening to Dear Mr. Potter. And I will say now, for the penultimate time, I guess, if I can call up the little control that allows me to end this live broadcast, otherwise I'll just be here with you for the next 8 hours. I will say now, for the penultimate time, mischief managed. Good night, y'all.